The wind came first. It always did in Montana, cutting across the plains like a blade, sharp enough to make your eyes water and your bones ache. Eliza Rowan felt it the moment she stepped off the train, January cold that didn't care about hope or second chances. She pulled her coat tighter, gripping the handle of her worn trunk with one hand and steadying the crate of chickens with the other. The birds clucked nervously, feathers ruffling in protest. The platform was nearly empty, a few ranchers loading supplies, a station master who didn't look up, and him, Cole Maddox. She recognized him from the single photograph he'd sent, though the man in that picture had seemed softer somehow, more approachable. The man standing before her now was all hard lines and shadows. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by sun and wind and something else, something that looked a lot like regret. His hat was pulled low, his coat dusted with snow, and his eyes barely met hers. "Miss Rowan," he said. Not a question, not a greeting, just a statement of fact. "Mr. Maddox." She set the chicken crate down and extended her hand, a gesture of civility she'd practiced on the long journey west. He looked at her hand for a beat too long, then took it briefly. His grip was rough, impersonal. "You bring much more than that?" "Just the trunk, and the chickens." His gaze flicked to the crate, and something that might have been irritation crossed his face. "Chickens? They're layers, good ones, I thought." "Didn't ask for chickens." Eliza's jaw tightened. She'd spent the last 3 weeks on trains and stages, rehearsing what she'd say, how she'd present herself as capable, useful, worth the risk he'd taken in sending for her. The chickens were supposed to be proof of that. Instead, they were an inconvenience. "I didn't ask for Montana," she said quietly, "but here we are." His eyes snapped to hers then, really looking at her for the first time. There was surprise there, maybe, or annoyance. It was hard to tell. "Wagons this way." He picked up her trunk like it weighed nothing and started walking. Eliza grabbed the chicken crate and followed, her boots crunching through the frozen mud. The town, if you could call it that, was a scattering of wooden buildings huddled against the cold. A general store, a saloon, a church with peeling paint. Everything looked temporary, like it might blow away in the next storm. The wagon was old but sturdy, hitched to 2 horses that looked as tired as she felt. Cole loaded her trunk into the back without ceremony, then eyed the chicken crate. "They gonna make it out to the ranch?" "They've made it this far." He grunted and took the crate from her, securing it next to the trunk. Then he climbed up onto the driver's seat and waited. Eliza hesitated. This was it. The last moment she could change her mind, demand the station master put her back on the next train east. She had $43 left to her name, enough to get halfway back to Philadelphia maybe. Enough to starve slowly instead of quickly. She climbed up beside him. Cole didn't say anything, just snapped the reins, and the horses started moving. The silence stretched. Not comfortable, not hostile, just empty. Eliza watched the town recede behind them, replaced by endless white plains broken only by clusters of dark trees and distant mountains that looked more like threats than promises. The sky was low and gray, heavy with the promise of more snow. "How far?" she asked finally. 8 miles. 8 miles. She'd crossed half a continent, and now the final distance felt longer than all of it. "You get my letters?" She tried again. "Got 'em." "I wasn't sure. You didn't write back after the 3rd one. Didn't seem much point. You were already coming." She bit back a response. He wasn't wrong. What would he have said? Don't come? She'd already sold everything she had, burned every bridge back east. There was no don't come anymore. "The house," she said. "You mentioned it needs work." "Everything needs work." "I can work." He glanced at her then, a quick sideways look that took in her fine-boned face, her city clothes, her hands that had never touched a plow or skinned an animal. She saw the doubt in his expression before he turned back to the road. "We'll see." The ranch appeared slowly, emerging from the landscape like something that had grown there by accident. A single-story house, weathered gray, with a sagging porch and chimney leaking thin smoke. A barn that leaned slightly to one side. Corrals with broken fencing, outbuildings that looked abandoned. And everywhere, snow, mud, and the kind of silence that came from things dying slowly. Cole pulled the wagon up to the house and climbed down without helping her. Eliza stepped down on her own, her legs stiff from the cold and the ride. She looked around, taking it in. This was it. This was what she'd traded her old life for. It was worse than she'd imagined. Barns for the horses and the milk cow, Cole said, already unloading her trunk. Chickens can go in the shed for now. I'll fix up a proper coop when there's time. When will there be time? Spring, maybe. He carried her trunk to the porch, then stopped at the door. One thing you should know before you go in. Eliza waited. I sleep in the barn. She blinked. What? The house is yours. I'll take the barn. You can't sleep in a barn all winter. You'll freeze. Been doing it for 2 years. I'll manage. Why? He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something raw in his face. Something that might have been shame or grief or just exhaustion. Because this was a mistake, he said. Sending for you. Asking you to come here. You should have stayed east. Well, I didn't. No, you didn't. He pushed the door open. It's not much, but it's warm. And it's yours. He walked away before she could respond, heading for the barn with long strides. Eliza stood on the porch, watching him go, feeling something tight and hard settle in her chest. Not anger, not yet. Determination. The inside of the house was better than the outside, barely. One main room with a stone fireplace, a rough table, 2 chairs, a cast-iron stove. A single bedroom off to the side with a narrow bed and a trunk at its foot. Everything was clean. She'd give him that. Swept floors, dishes stacked neatly, firewood piled by the hearth. But it was clean the way a place gets clean when no one really lives there, when it's just somewhere to survive between the things that actually matter. Eliza set down the chicken crate and walked through slowly, running her hand along the table, the back of a chair, the edge of the stove. Cold. Everything was cold. She went to the fireplace and knelt, finding matches on the mantel and coaxing the dying embers back to life. The flames caught, spreading warmth in a small circle that didn't reach the corners of the room. She sat back on her heels and let herself feel it, all of it. The fear, the exhaustion, the creeping certainty that she'd made a terrible mistake. Then she stood up. Because sitting wouldn't change anything. She spent the next hour making the house livable. She unpacked her trunk, hanging her few dresses on pegs by the bedroom, stacking her books, 3 of them, all she'd been able to keep, on the window ledge. She found blankets in the bedroom trunk and aired them out, remaking the bed with sharp, efficient movements. She checked the pantry and found it stocked. Flour, beans, salt pork, coffee, dried apples. Enough to survive. Not enough to live. She made coffee. Strong and bitter, the way her father used to like it. Then she sat at the table and drank it slowly, staring out the window at the barn. He was out there. A man who'd sent for a wife and then decided he'd rather sleep with animals than face what he'd done. She should have been angry. Part of her was. But mostly, she was just tired. Cole didn't come in for dinner. Eliza made stew, salt pork, beans, dried onions, whatever she could find, and set a bowl aside for him. She ate alone at the table, listening to the wind rattle the windows and the fire crackle in the hearth. When she finished, she washed the dishes, banked the fire, and stood at the door for a long moment, holding his bowl. Then she put on her coat and walked out to the barn. The cold hit her like a fist, stealing her breath. She crossed the yard quickly, boots sinking into the snow, and pushed open the barn door. It was warmer inside, barely. The horses shifted in their stalls and the milk cow lowed softly. A single lantern hung from a beam, casting long shadows. Cole was at the far end, pitching hay into the stalls. He didn't look up. "Brought you dinner," Eliza said. "Didn't ask for it. Didn't ask if you wanted it. Just brought it." She set the bowl on a barrel near the door. He stopped working, finally looking at her. His face was hard to read in the lamplight. "You don't have to do that." "Do what?" "Act like this is normal." "It's not normal," she agreed, "but it's what we have." He leaned on the pitchfork, studying her. "Why'd you come?" "You sent for me." "That's not an answer." Eliza crossed her arms, more for warmth than defense. "I had nothing back east. No family, no prospects, no money. Your ad said you needed someone capable and willing to work. That's me. So I came." "You could have found something else." "Like what? A factory? A workhouse? Marrying some clerk who'd keep me barefoot in a tenement?" She shook her head. At least here I have a chance. A chance at what? At building something. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. There's nothing to build. This place is dying, has been for years. Then why are you still here? The question hung between them. Cole turned away, going back to his work. Eat your dinner, Eliza said. It'll get cold. She left before he could respond. The first week was a test. Not a deliberate one. Cole wasn't cruel. But the ranch itself was a gauntlet, and every day presented new obstacles that measured whether she'd break. She didn't. The chickens settled into the shed, and Eliza rigged a better enclosure using scrap wood and chicken wire she found in one of the outbuildings. Cole watched from a distance, but didn't help. When the structure held, she saw something shift in his face. Not approval, exactly, but acknowledgement. She took over the kitchen completely. Breakfast before dawn, coffee, biscuits, fried salt pork. Dinner at dusk, whatever she could make stretch. Cole still didn't eat with her, but the empty bowls she left in the barn came back clean every morning. She explored the property, mapping it in her mind. The garden plot, frozen solid, overgrown with dead weeds. The root cellar, half empty, poorly organized. The spring house, functional but filthy. The fences, broken in a dozen places. The fields, nothing but snow and stubborn grass. It was overwhelming. And it was hers. On the fourth day, she found the other graves. She'd been walking the perimeter of the property, trying to gauge where the boundaries were, when she saw them, 2 wooden crosses on a small rise overlooking the valley. The wood was weathered, but solid, the names carved deep. Sarah Maddox, 1841 to 1873. James Maddox, 1871 to 1873. Wife. Son. Eliza stood there for a long time, the wind pulling at her coat. She didn't touch the crosses, didn't say anything, just stood and bore witness to what Cole had lost. When she got back to the house, he was in the yard, fixing a broken hinge on the barn door. I saw the graves, she said. His hands stilled. Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't need your sorry. I know, but you have it anyway. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his face cracked open just slightly. Then he turned back to his work, and the moment was gone. The second week, the weather turned. A storm blew in from the north, fast and vicious. Eliza woke to the sound of wind screaming around the house and snow piling against the windows. She dressed quickly, layering everything she had, and went outside to check the animals. The chickens were huddled together, panicked. She moved them into the barn, one crate at a time, fighting the wind that tried to rip the door from her hands. The cow was already inside, and the horses were restless but safe. She checked their water, their feed, made sure everything was secure. Cole appeared halfway through, materializing out of the white like a ghost. Get back inside, he shouted over the wind. Not until this is done. He saw Chan. He didn't argue, just helped her finish, his movements quick and efficient. When the last animal was settled, they stood in the barn together, breathing hard, covered in snow. Storm like this can last 3 days, he said. Then we'll last 3 days. He almost smiled. Almost. They made it back to the house together, leaning into the wind. Inside, Eliza shook off the snow and went straight to the stove, building up the fire until the room glowed with heat. Cole stood by the door, dripping, looking uncomfortable. You should change, she said. You'll catch your death. I'll go back to the barn. You'll freeze in the barn. I've managed before. This isn't before. She met his eyes. And I'm not asking. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he took off his coat. The storm lasted 4 days. 4 days trapped in the house together, the world outside reduced to howling white. They fell into a rhythm by necessity. Cole tended the fire, brought in wood, checked the animals twice a day. Eliza cooked, rationed supplies, kept the house functional. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them started to feel less empty. On the second night, Cole spoke without prompting. They died of fever, he said. Sarah and Jamie. Winter of 73. Doctor couldn't get through the snow. Eliza was mending a shirt by lamplight. She kept sewing, giving him space. I was out checking the herd when it hit. Came back to find them both sick. Sarah told me to save Jamie. Keep him warm, she said. Keep him alive. His voice was flat, emotionless. I tried, but he was only too small, and she went the next day. That wasn't your fault. I know. He stared at the fire. Doesn't matter, though, knowing that. Eliza set down her sewing. Is that why you sleep in the barn? Part of it. What's the other part? He looked at her. Didn't want to get used to someone being here. Seemed easier to keep distance. And now? Now I don't know. It wasn't much, but it was honest. On the fourth day, the storm broke. The world emerged white and silent, transformed. Eliza stepped outside and just breathed, feeling the cold, clean air fill her lungs. The ranch looked almost beautiful under fresh snow, almost enough to hide the decay. Cole was already out, digging paths to the barn, the shed, the well. She grabbed a shovel and joined him without asking. He didn't protest. They worked side by side for hours, clearing snow, checking for damage, making sure the animals had survived. The chickens were fine. The cow was fine. The horses were restless but unharmed. Everything had held. When they finished, Eliza made a decision. Tonight we're having a real meal, she said. Something better than beans and salt pork. Cole raised an eyebrow. With what? Leave that to me. She spent the afternoon working magic with the meager supplies. She made biscuits, real ones, light and fluffy. She stewed dried apples with cinnamon and precious sugar. She fried potatoes and the last of the good bacon. It wasn't fancy, but it was food made with care, and when she set it on the table, Cole just stared. When's the last time you had a meal like this? She asked. Long time. Then sit down and eat it. He did. And for the first time since she'd arrived, they ate together, not in silence, but with the kind of quiet that comes from shared exhaustion and small victories. When they finished, Cole pushed back his plate and looked at her. You're tougher than I thought, he said. I have to be. No, I mean it. Most people wouldn't have lasted a week here. Most people didn't have a choice. You had a choice. You could have left on the next train. Eliza met his eyes. So could you. He nodded slowly, something like respect settling between them. Yeah, I could have. But neither of them had. And that, more than any promise or contract, was what bound them to this place, to each other. By the third week, the dynamic had shifted. Cole stopped sleeping in the barn. He didn't make a production of it, just showed up one night, set his bedroll by the fire, and that was that. Eliza didn't comment, just put an extra blanket within reach and went to bed. They started talking more, small things at first. The weather, the animals, what needed fixing, then bigger things. His plans for the ranch, if he had any, her ideas for the garden, the chickens, expanding what they could grow and raise. You really think you can make that work? He asked one night, studying the rough sketches she'd drawn. I think we have to try. We. Yes, we. He looked at her for a long moment, then he nodded. All right, we'll try. It wasn't a declaration of partnership, but it was a start. The town came calling on a Wednesday. Eliza was out feeding the chickens when she heard the wagon, looked up to see two women approaching, bundled in furs and judgment. She recognized the type immediately, the ones who ran the church socials, who decided who was respectable and who wasn't. Cole was in the barn. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to meet them. Mrs. Maddox? The older woman spoke first, her smile tight and appraising. Miss Rowan, Eliza corrected, we haven't had the ceremony yet. Oh, the smile got tighter. How unconventional. The younger woman, maybe 30, with sharp eyes, leaned forward. We're from the Ladies' Aid Society. We wanted to welcome you properly. That's kind of you. And to make sure you're settling in appropriately. There it was, the real reason for the visit. I'm settling just fine, Eliza said evenly. It must be difficult, the older woman said. A young woman, alone with a man, unmarried. People talk, dear. Let them. Both women blinked, clearly not expecting that response. We simply think, the younger one tried, that it would be better for everyone if you and Mr. Maddox formalized your arrangement for propriety's sake. When we're ready. And when will that be? Eliza smiled, sweet and cold. When it's none of your business. The older woman gasped. The younger one flushed. They left shortly after, their wagon rattling back toward town, and Eliza stood in the yard feeling her hands shake, not from fear, but from anger. Cole emerged from the barn, clearly having heard everything. "You just made enemies," he said. "I didn't come here to make friends." "What did you come here for?" She looked at him. "To build something. I told you that." "Even if it means the whole town against you?" "Especially then." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or admiration. "You're not what I expected," he said quietly. "Good. I'd hate to be predictable." That night, Cole brought up the marriage again. "They're not wrong," he said, sitting by the fire. "About the talk. It'll get worse." "I don't care about talk." "You should. Out here, reputation matters. You won't be able to buy supplies if they decide you're What? Immoral? A loose woman?" Eliza set down her mending. "Let me tell you what I am, Cole. I'm someone who crossed half a country on a promise and a prayer. I'm someone who's worked every day since I got here without complaint. I'm someone who's earned my place. If they can't see that, that's their failing, not mine." He was quiet for a moment. "You want to get married?" "Do you?" "I'm asking what you want." Eliza considered. "I want a partnership, not a performance." "What's the difference?" "A performance is for other people. A partnership is for us." Cole nodded slowly. "Fair enough. So when we do this, if we do this, it's because we choose it, not because some bored women decided we're a scandal." "Agreed." They shook on it formally, like business partners. And maybe that's what they were. Maybe that was enough. The weeks blurred together after that. Eliza threw herself into work. She cleaned out the root cellar, organized supplies, started planning the spring garden with an ambition that would have seemed crazy if Cole hadn't seen her make good on every other promise. She expanded the chicken operation, building better roosts, collecting eggs with ruthless efficiency. She learned to milk the cow, patch fences, smoke meat. She learned the ranch, its rhythms and needs and endless demands. Cole watched her with something like wonder. "You ever worked a ranch before?" he asked one day. "No." "Where'd you learn all this?" "Books, watching, trying." "You're going to work yourself into the ground." "Then I'll work from the ground." He shook his head, but he was smiling, really smiling, for the first time since she'd arrived. They fell into a routine. Up before dawn. Work until dusk. Meals together now, always. They talked more, about the land, about plans, about the small victories and constant setbacks. Cole started teaching her things. How to read weather, how to track animals, how to fix what broke. She taught him things too. How to plan, how to organize, how to see beyond just surviving to actually building something that lasted. The partnership was forming, slowly, carefully, like trust always does, earned in small increments, tested constantly. February came, and with it, trouble. Cole found the first sign, tracks in the snow near the north pasture. Not deer, not elk, something bigger, more deliberate. "Cattle?" Eliza asked. "Cattle. Being driven." "Ours?" "Don't have any cattle, not since I sold the last of the herd 3 years back." He studied the tracks. "These are fresh. Last night, maybe." "Rustlers? We're just passing through, hard to say." But his face said he knew, and it worried him. Over the next week, they saw more signs. Riders in the distance, fences cut, supplies going missing from the shed. Small things, easy to dismiss. But they added up. "Someone's testing us," Cole said one night, "seeing how much they can get away with." "What do we do?" "We watch. We're careful. And we don't give them a reason to escalate." But Eliza saw the way he checked his rifle now, the way he scanned the horizon constantly, the way he made sure she knew where the spare ammunition was kept. The ranch had always been hard. Now it was getting dangerous. The confrontation came on a Tuesday. 3 men rode up to the house, big, rough, the kind who'd learned early that size and violence could get them what they wanted. Eliza was alone, Cole having gone to check the spring for ice damage. She met them in the yard, rifle in hand but lowered. Not aggressive, not passive either. "Help you, gentlemen?" she asked. The leader, middle-aged with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, smiled. It wasn't friendly. Heard there's a new woman out at Maddox's place. Wanted to see for ourselves. You've seen, now you can go. Not very hospitable. Wasn't trying to be. The other two laughed. The leader's smile got colder. Your man know you talk like that? I'm not interested in what you think about how I talk. Feisty. He dismounted, slow and deliberate. I like that. Eliza raised the rifle. Not pointing it at him, not yet, just raising it. That's close enough. He stopped, hands up in mock surrender. Easy now, just being neighborly. We don't need neighbors like you. Everyone needs neighbors, especially out here. Things happen. Accidents. Be a shame if something happened to you while Maddox was away. It wasn't subtle. It was a threat, clear and direct. I can take care of myself. Can you? He took another step. The rifle came up, stock against her shoulder, aimed dead center at his chest. Last warning. For a moment, everything hung in balance. The two men still on horseback shifted nervously. The leader stood very still, reading her eyes, trying to decide if she'd really do it. Then Cole's voice cut through the tension. She'll shoot you, he said calmly, walking up from the side, his own rifle carried easy but ready. And I'll help bury you. Save everyone the trouble of a trial. The leader turned, assessing this new variable. Maddox, Shaw. Cole stopped next to Eliza, a united front. Heard you'd been sniffing around. Just checking on the new addition to the territory. You've checked. Now leave. Shaw studied them both for a long moment. Then he smiled, cold and promising future trouble. Sure. We'll leave. He mounted up. But you're making a mistake, Maddox. This land's too much for one man. You need friends. Got all the friends I need. Shaw looked at Eliza. That girl ain't going to save your ranch. Good thing I'm not trying to save it, Eliza said. I'm trying to build it. Something flickered in Shaw's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. Then he turned his horse and rode off, his men following. Cole and Eliza stood in the yard until they were out of sight. You okay? He asked quietly. I'm fine. You would have shot him. Yes. He looked at her, really looked at her, and nodded slowly. Good. That night they talked strategy. Shaw runs cattle through here in the spring, Cole explained. Uses the open range, helps himself to whatever he finds. He's been trying to buy me out for years. Wants the water rights. Why didn't you sell? Because this is mine. Was Sarah's, was supposed to be Jamie's. He stared into the fire. I'm not giving it up. Then we don't give it up. Eliza, he's dangerous, and he's got men. We're two people on failing land, so we make it not failing land. How? She'd been thinking about this for weeks. Now she laid it out. We expand, not cattle. That takes too much capital and time. But chickens, eggs, vegetables in the spring, we sell to the town, to miners, to travelers. We make this place profitable, visible, too important to just push aside. That's ambitious. That's necessary. Cole was quiet for a long moment. You really think we can do this? I think we don't have a choice. Shaw's not going away. And sitting here waiting for him to make his move is just dying slow. What if we fail? Then we fail fighting. She met his eyes. I didn't come this far to surrender. He smiled, that rare, real smile that made him look younger, less haunted. All right, he said. Let's build something. Boom. March arrived with false promises of spring. The snow melted in patches, revealing dead grass and mud and the overwhelming scope of work ahead. Eliza and Cole threw themselves into it with matching desperation. They rebuilt fences, reinforced corrals, cleared the garden plot. Eliza drew up plans for an expanded chicken operation. 3 times the birds, organized by breed and purpose. Cole was skeptical, but didn't argue. He'd learned that when Eliza set her mind to something, it was easier to help than resist. They went to town together for supplies. The stares followed them everywhere, the respectable women whispering behind hands, the men watching with open speculation. Eliza ignored it all, marching through her list with military efficiency. Cole stayed close, a silent presence that said, "She's with me, try something." At the general store, the owner, a thin man named Peters, hesitated before selling to them. Heard you're expanding operations, he said carefully. That's right. A lot of work for 2 people. We'll manage. Just be careful. Some folks don't take kindly to change. It wasn't advice. It was a warning. We'll be careful, Cole said. Now we need 6 more hens, laying breed, and 2 roosters. You got 'em? Peters did. They paid, loaded up, and left without lingering. On the ride back, Eliza said, Everyone knows. About Shaw? About us. What we're trying to do. They think we'll fail. Do you care? She thought about it. No, but I want to prove them wrong. Cole grinned. Me too, sad. April brought real warmth, and with it, the first test of their partnership. The garden went in, rows of potatoes, beans, carrots, onions, turnips, everything that could grow in this harsh climate. Eliza worked the soil like she was at war with it, and maybe she was. Cole helped when he could, but there was other work, repairs that couldn't wait, animals that needed tending, the endless maintenance of a ranch held together by stubbornness and spite. The chickens thrived. Eliza had a gift for it, knowing which birds to cull, which to keep, how to maximize egg production. Within weeks, they had more eggs than they could use. She started selling to town, driving the wagon in herself, refusing to let Cole shield her from the stares and judgment. The money came in slowly, but it came. We're not dying, Cole said one night, looking at their accounts. That's something. We're not just surviving either, Eliza replied. We're growing. Yeah, we are. He looked at her across the table and something passed between them. Recognition, respect, the beginning of something deeper that neither was ready to name. The town dance happened on a Saturday. Eliza hadn't planned to go, but Cole brought it up over breakfast, awkward and uncertain. There's a social tonight at the church. If you wanted to go, why would I want that? Might be good, to be seen together, to, I don't know, be normal. She studied him. You hate those things. Yeah, but maybe it's time we stopped letting other people write our story. So they went. The church social was exactly what Eliza expected. Stiff formality, masking vicious gossip, everyone pretending to be civilized while mentally cataloging every flaw and scandal. She and Cole arrived together, both dressed in their best, which wasn't saying much, and walked into a room that went silent. Then the whispers started. Cole's jaw tightened. Eliza squeezed his arm. Let them talk, she murmured. We're here, that's what matters. They made the rounds. Polite, but not obsequious. Eliza shook hands, made small talk, refused to apologize for her existence. Some people warmed up, the blacksmith's wife, a young couple new to town, the doctor. Others stayed cold. The Ladies' Aid Society watched from across the room like predators waiting for weakness. Then Shaw showed up. He swaggered in with his men, dominating the space like he owned it. When he saw Eliza and Cole, his smile went sharp. Well, look at this, he said loudly. Maddox cleaned up real nice and brought his business partner. The room went quiet again. Cole stepped forward, but Eliza moved faster. Mr. Shaw, she said pleasantly. Lovely evening, isn't it? He blinked, thrown by her tone. Yeah. Sure. How's your cattle operation? Still driving through other people's land without permission? His smile vanished. Careful, girl. I'm always careful. You should try it. For a moment, Shaw looked like he might escalate. Then he laughed. Loud, forced, covering embarrassment. She's got spirit, Maddox. I'll give you that. She's got more than that, Cole said quietly. Remember it. Shaw's smile turned ugly, but he moved on. The rest of the evening passed without incident, but the lines had been drawn, publicly, irrevocably. When they got home, Cole said, You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Why? Because they need to know we're not afraid. And we're not backing down. He looked at her in the lamplight, something shifting in his expression. When did this become we? He asked softly. I don't know, she admitted, but it did. He nodded. Then carefully he took her hand. They stood there in the small house, hands joined, the partnership becoming something more, something neither had planned for but both were beginning to want. Outside, the Montana night pressed in, cold and indifferent, but inside, for the first time, the house felt like home. The partnership had been forged, the trust was building, but the land was about to demand its price, and the real test was only beginning. May arrived with work that never ended. The garden demanded constant attention, weeding, watering, fighting off rabbits and deer that saw their crops as a buffet. Eliza spent hours bent over rows of emerging plants, her back screaming, her hands raw. She didn't complain. Complaining was a luxury they couldn't afford. Cole worked the land with the same grim determination, repairing irrigation ditches, clearing rocks, expanding the pasture. They moved around each other like dancers who'd learned the steps through repetition rather than grace. Efficient, coordinated, always aware of where the other was. The chicken operation grew. Eliza now had 40 birds, organized by breed and purpose. Layers in one coop, meat birds in another, a separate pen for the roosters she was breeding for temperament and size. The eggs went to town twice a week, and the money, small but steady, went into a tin box under the floorboards. "We need cattle," Cole said one evening, studying their finances. "Real cattle. A breeding pair at least. We can't afford cattle. Can't afford not to. Shaw's going to push harder once he realizes we're serious. We need something to show we're not just playing at this." Eliza set down her mending. "How much?" "For good stock? $100. Maybe more." They had $63 saved. It had taken 3 months of brutal work to save that much. "Then we keep saving," she said. "That'll take another 2 months, maybe 3. "Then it takes 3 months. Cole shook his head, frustrated. "We don't have 3 months. Shaw's already been cutting through the north pasture, helping himself to our water, testing boundaries. So we stop him." "How?" "We tell him no." "Eliza, it's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple." She stood up, pacing. "Every time we let him take something, he takes more. Every time we back down, he pushes harder. We have to draw a line. And if he crosses it, then we make him regret it." Cole stared at her. "You're talking about a fight. I'm talking about survival." They looked at each other across the small room, the weight of the decision hanging between them. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about whether they'd be victims or fighters. "All right," Cole said finally. "We draw the line. But we do it smart." They spent the next 3 days preparing. Cole rode the property boundaries, marking them clearly with posts and white paint. Eliza accompanied him, carrying the rifle, watching for riders. They posted signs at every entry point. "Private property, no trespassing, violators will be prosecuted." It was a formality. Shaw couldn't read, and even if he could, he wouldn't care. But it established their claim, made it official, made it defendable in any court that might care about law over power. On the 4th day, Shaw tested them. They heard the cattle first, the low bellow and thunder of hooves. Cole and Eliza ran to the north pasture and found Shaw driving a herd of maybe 30 head straight through their land, trampling new grass, fouling the water. Cole rode out to meet him. Eliza followed on foot, rifle in hand. "Shaw!" Cole's voice carried over the noise. "Turn your herd, now!" Shaw reined in, his men flanking him. "This is open range, Maddox. This is posted private property. Turn them." "Or what?" Cole's hand rested on his holstered pistol. "Or we have a problem," Shaw laughed. "You gonna shoot me over some grass?" "If I have to." The moment stretched. Shaw's men shifted nervously. This wasn't supposed to escalate. They were just supposed to intimidate, push, see how far they could go. But Cole wasn't bluffing, and Shaw saw it. "You're making a mistake," Shaw said. "You're on my land. Leave." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Shaw spat in the dirt and turned his horse. "Move 'em out," he barked at his men. The herd wheeled and headed east, away from the Maddox property. Shaw looked back once, his face promising retribution, then rode off. Cole and Eliza stood in the trampled grass, breathing hard. "That won't be the end of it," she said. "No, it won't." "What do we do?" "We get ready." That night they didn't sleep. They took turns on watch, one inside with the rifle, one on the porch with the shotgun. The night passed without incident, but the tension didn't break. Shaw had been challenged publicly, and men like him didn't forget that. Morning came gray and cold. Cole made coffee while Eliza checked the animals. Everything was fine, no sabotage, no theft. But the waiting was its own kind of torture. "Maybe he'll let it go," Eliza said without conviction. "He won't." "How do you know?" "Because I wouldn't." Cole poured coffee, his movements mechanical. A man like Shaw, his reputation is everything. We made him back down in front of his men. He can't let that stand. So what's he going to do? Something that hurts, something that makes us regret standing up to him. They fortified. Cole brought the animals closer to the house, consolidated them where they could be watched. Eliza organized their supplies, made sure they had ammunition, water, food enough to last a siege if it came to that. They moved through the work silently, each lost in their own calculations of risk and consequence. The attack came 3 nights later. Eliza woke to the smell of smoke. She bolted upright, heart hammering, and saw orange light flickering through the window. Fire. She grabbed her coat and ran outside, Cole already ahead of her. The chicken coop was burning. Flames climbed the wooden structure, fed by dry wood and old straw. The birds inside were screaming, a horrible, piercing sound that cut through the night. Cole ran for the water pump while Eliza ran for the coop door. "Don't!" Cole shouted. "It's too far gone. The birds are in there." She yanked open the door and smoke billowed out, choking, blinding. She could see shapes moving inside, panicked birds running in circles, trapped by their own fear. She plunged in, grabbing birds 2 at a time, throwing them out into the yard. The heat was incredible, searing her lungs, making her eyes stream. Cole appeared beside her, dragging out roosters, pushing her toward the door when the roof started to groan. They stumbled out together just as the structure collapsed inward, sending sparks into the black sky. They saved 19 birds, 21 died in the fire. They spent the rest of the night containing the blaze, making sure it didn't spread to the barn or house. By dawn, all that remained of the coop was smoking wreckage and the smell of burned feathers and ash. Eliza stood in the ruins, her face streaked with soot, her hands blistered. She didn't cry. Crying was for later, when there was time for weakness. "Shaw did this," Cole said quietly. "I know. We can't prove it. We don't need proof. We know." Cole looked at the destruction, his face carved from stone. "What do you want to do?" Eliza turned to face him. "I want to fight back." "How?" "I don't know yet. But we don't let this break us. We rebuild. We keep going. And we make damn sure Shaw knows he didn't win." It was defiance built on ashes and spite, but it was all they had. They buried the dead birds that afternoon. Not out of sentiment, but because leaving them would attract predators. Then they started the salvage, pulling out undamaged wire, collecting unburned boards, saving anything that could be reused. The 19 surviving birds huddled in a makeshift pen near the barn, traumatized and skittish. Eliza sat with them for hours, talking softly, coaxing them to eat, to settle, to trust that safety was possible again. Cole watched her from across the yard, something shifting in his chest. Most people would have given up, would have taken this as a sign to quit, to sell out, to run. But Eliza just kept pushing forward like surrender wasn't even in her vocabulary. He walked over and crouched beside her. "You all right?" "No, but I will be." "Your hands will heal." He took one of her burned hands carefully, examining the blisters. "We should bandage these." "Later." "Eliza..." "Later, Cole." She looked at him, her eyes fierce despite the exhaustion. "Right now I need to make sure they're okay. Then we can worry about me." He nodded slowly and sat beside her, keeping watch while she tended the birds. The sun climbed higher, indifferent to their losses, and the ranch kept demanding their attention because that's what ranches did. They took and took and took, and the only thing you could do was keep giving. Word spread fast in a town that small. By the next day, everyone knew about the fire. The official story was an accident, a lantern tipped over maybe, or spontaneous combustion from damp hay. No one said Shaw's name out loud, but everyone knew. Peters from the general store offered credit for supplies to rebuild. The blacksmith's wife brought over salve for burns and bread she'd baked herself. The young couple who'd been friendly at the church social showed up with lumber. Not much, but enough to help. "Heard what happened," the husband said, unloading boards. "Figured you could use some help." "We didn't ask," Cole started. "Don't have to ask," the wife interrupted. "That's what neighbors do." It was the first time anyone had called them neighbors without judgment attached. Eliza felt something crack open in her chest. Not quite hope, but close. They rebuilt the coop in 4 days. It was smaller than before, more functional than pretty, but it was solid. Eliza moved the surviving birds in and stood back, assessing their work. "It's not the same," she said. No, but it's ours. She looked at Cole. Shaw's not going to stop. I know. So what do we do? Just keep taking hits? Keep rebuilding every time he burns us down? What's the alternative? We go after him. Cole's eyes narrowed. How? I don't know yet, but there has to be something he cares about, something he's vulnerable to. Men like Shaw don't have vulnerabilities. Everyone has vulnerabilities. We just have to find his. They started watching, quietly, carefully, never obvious about it. When Cole went to town, he asked questions. Where did Shaw keep his herd? Who worked for him? What were his patterns, his habits, his weaknesses? The picture that emerged wasn't encouraging. Shaw was careful. He kept his operation tight, his men loyal through fear and pay. His land was well defended, his cattle scattered across multiple ranges. He had friends in the territorial government, men who'd look the other way when convenient. But he also had enemies. Cole learned this from the town drunk, a man named Whelan, who'd once worked for Shaw and been cast out for stealing. Whelan was bitter and broke and more than willing to talk for the price of a bottle. Shaw's got a contract with the railroad, Whelan said, his words slurring. Delivers beef twice a year, big contract, keeps him flush. When's the next delivery? Cole asked. June. 3 weeks, maybe. And if that delivery didn't happen? Whelan grinned, showing gaps where teeth used to be. Then Shaw'd have problems. Railroad don't forgive missed contracts, and they sure don't give second chances. Cole paid for the bottle and left, his mind racing. That night, he told Eliza what he'd learned. We can't sabotage his herd, she said immediately. That's too far. I'm not talking about killing cattle. I'm talking about making sure they don't make it to the railroad on time. How? By giving them somewhere better to go. The plan was risky and probably illegal, but they were past the point of following rules that didn't protect them. Shaw ran his cattle through open range, letting them graze freely before roundup. The herd wasn't fenced, wasn't guarded except during drives. It would be easy enough to spook them, scatter them, drive them toward better grazing on land that Shaw didn't control. Easy enough, except getting caught would mean jail time at best, a bullet at worst. It's too dangerous, Eliza said. So is standing up to him in the pasture. That was defense. This is offense. You said we needed to fight back. I said we needed to fight smart. She paced the small room, thinking, what if we get caught? We don't get caught. Cole. Eliza, I'm tired. He stood up, his voice rough. I'm tired of being pushed around, tired of watching everything we build get torn down, tired of men like Shaw taking whatever they want because good people are too scared to stop them. She looked at him, seeing the anger that had been building for months, no, years, since before she arrived, since Sarah and Jamie died and the world became a place where decent people suffered and bastards prospered. Okay, she said quietly. We do it, but we plan it right. No mistakes. They spent the next week preparing. Cole scouted Shaw's range, learning the terrain, the patterns, where the cattle grazed and when. Eliza stayed home, managing the ranch, maintaining the illusion of normalcy. The night before they'd act, Cole had second thoughts. Maybe this is wrong, he said, staring into the fire. It is wrong. Then why? Because right hasn't been working. Eliza sat beside him. Sometimes you have to get dirty to stay alive. And if it makes us like him, it won't. Because we're not doing this for greed or power. We're doing it to protect what's ours. He wanted to believe that, needed to believe it. If something goes wrong, he started, nothing's going wrong, we go in quiet, scatter the herd, get out, simple. Nothing's ever simple. No, she agreed, but we don't have better options. They left at midnight, riding north under a half moon. The land was silver and shadow, beautiful and treacherous. Cole led the way, Eliza following on her smaller mare, both horses moving quietly across the grass. They found Shaw's herd 2 hours later, bedded down in a valley with good water and better grass. Maybe 60 head, all told. No guards visible, though that didn't mean much. Cole dismounted and moved closer on foot, studying the layout. The cattle were calm, half asleep. Perfect conditions. He signaled Eliza to circle east while he went west. The plan was to approach from opposite sides, make noise, spook the herd into running south, away from Shaw's land, away from the railroad route. Eliza moved into position, her heart hammering. This was it, the point where they crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She waited for Cole's signal. When it came, a sharp whistle, perfectly mimicking a nighthawk, she stood up and shouted, waving her arms, firing a shot into the air. The cattle exploded into motion. They ran south, exactly as planned, a river of panicked animals flooding across the valley. Cole appeared on the other side, driving them, keeping them moving. It was working. It was actually working. Then a voice cut through the chaos. "What the hell?" A guard, one they'd missed. He came running from behind an outcrop, rifle in hand, shouting for help. Cole wheeled his horse and charged, not at the guard but past him, trying to draw attention away from Eliza. It worked. The guard fired, missed, ran after Cole's horse. Eliza kicked her mare and rode hard in the opposite direction. The cattle were still running, disappearing into the darkness. The job was done. They just had to get out. She made it half a mile before she heard hoofbeats behind her. Not Cole. Someone else. She looked back and saw two riders closing fast. Shaw's men. They must have been camped nearby, heard the commotion. "Stop!" one of them yelled. Like hell. Eliza leaned forward, urging her mare faster. The horse responded gamely, but it was smaller, slower. The men were gaining. A shot cracked past her head. Too close. She veered right, toward rougher ground where the bigger horses would struggle. It bought her seconds. She used them to get among the trees, branches whipping past, her mare nimble enough to weave through gaps the pursuers couldn't match. But they were persistent, and they knew this land. She broke out of the trees into open ground and saw, with sinking dread, that she'd run the wrong direction. This wasn't the way home. This was east, toward the gorge, toward broken land where a horse could snap a leg in the dark. The riders burst from the trees behind her, closer now, close enough she could hear them cursing. Her mare stumbled, caught itself, but the hesitation was enough. One of the riders pulled alongside, reaching for her reins. She yanked away, pulling her pistol, firing blind. The man swore and fell back, but the other one was right there, grabbing her arm, pulling. Eliza twisted, bringing the pistol up, pressing it against his side. "Let go." He looked at her, saw she meant it. Let go. Both riders pulled back, letting her run. But they stayed behind her, hurting her, driving her away from home territory. She realized too late what they were doing, running her to ground, tiring her horse, waiting for her to make a mistake. She had two choices: keep running until the mare collapsed or stop and fight. She stopped, spun the mare around, pistol raised, facing them down in the middle of nowhere. "That's far enough," she said. The two men reined in. They were young, maybe early 20s, ranch hands who probably thought this would be easy money. "Shaw's going to want to know who you are," one of them said. "Tell him it was Eliza Rowan, and if he wants to talk about it, he can come to my land like a man instead of burning coops in the night." They blinked, clearly not expecting that. "You're the Maddox woman," the other one said. "That's right." "You just scattered Shaw's herd." "Prove it." They looked at each other, uncertain. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. They were supposed to intimidate, maybe rough her up a little, send a message. But she wasn't intimidated, and shooting an unarmed woman, even one who'd just committed a crime, was a line they weren't ready to cross. "Shaw's going to hear about this," the first one said finally. "Good. Make sure he hears all of it." She turned her mare and rode away, slowly, refusing to show fear. The men didn't follow. They just watched her go, and when she finally looked back, they were heading in the opposite direction. She found Cole an hour later. He was waiting where they'd agreed to meet, if separated, his face tight with worry. "You all right?" he asked. "I got chased. They got a good look at me." "Damn it, but they let me go, and Shaw knows it was us now." Cole closed his eyes. "This is going to get worse." "I know." They rode home in silence, arriving just before dawn. The ranch looked peaceful in the early light, innocent of all the violence and risk and bad decisions. "What now?" Eliza asked as they unsaddled the horses. "Now we wait and get ready for whatever comes next." What came next was silence. Days passed, then a week. Shaw didn't show up, didn't send men, didn't burn anything else. The quiet was worse than threats. "He's planning something," Cole said. or he's letting it go. Shaw doesn't let things go. But the silence stretched, and eventually they had to go back to the work of surviving. The garden needed tending. The animals needed care. The ranch needed them to keep moving forward. Eliza threw herself into rebuilding the chicken operation. With help from the money they'd saved and credit from Peters, she bought new birds, better birds, different breeds. She organized them scientifically this time, keeping detailed records of which hens laid best, which roosters produced the strongest chicks. Cole watched her work with something like awe. She'd lost half her flock to fire and violence, been chased across the territory by armed men, and here she was planning like they had a future worth building toward. "You ever doubt this'll work?" he asked one evening. She looked up from her notebook. "Every day." "But you keep going." "What else is there to do?" It wasn't philosophy, just practicality. You kept going because stopping was dying, and dying was giving Shaw exactly what he wanted. June arrived with heat that made every task harder. The garden flourished despite the challenges. Potatoes coming in strong, beans climbing their stakes, carrots and turnips filling out underground. Eliza harvested constantly, selling surplus to town, building their reserves. The eggs kept coming too. 40 birds now, all laying, producing more than enough to turn a profit. She started supplying the hotel in town, the saloon, even the railway workers who passed through weekly. The money added up. Not quickly, but steadily. "We might actually make it," Cole said one night, counting coins. "Don't jinx it." But there was hope now, real hope, built on work and risk and stubborn refusal to quit. Then Shaw made his move. It came through the law this time. The sheriff showed up one Tuesday afternoon with papers and an apologetic expression. "Cole Maddox," he said, "I need you to come with me." "What for?" Cole asked. "Complaint's been filed, cattle rustling. You're being charged." Eliza's stomach dropped. "That's ridiculous. We didn't—" "Ma'am, I'm just serving the warrant. You'll have a chance to tell your side in court." "Who filed the complaint?" Cole asked, though they all knew. "Marcus Shaw. Says you scattered his herd deliberate. Cost him a railroad contract." There it was. Shaw's revenge, wrapped in legal paper. "When's the trial?" Cole asked. 3 weeks. You're released on your own recognizance, but don't leave the territory." The sheriff left, and Cole and Eliza stood in the yard, processing what had just happened. "He's smart," Cole said finally. "Can't beat us direct, so he uses the law." "Can they prove anything?" "Don't need much proof. My word against Shaw's, and Shaw's got friends." "Then we get a lawyer." "With what money? A decent lawyer costs more than we've got saved." Eliza paced, thinking furiously. "There has to be something we can do." "Yeah, we can fight it in court and probably lose. Or I can plead guilty, take whatever sentence they give, and hope it's not too long." "No, we're not giving up." "It's not giving up. It's being realistic. It's surrender." She stopped in front of him. "We didn't come this far to let Shaw win through paperwork." "Then what do you suggest?" She didn't have an answer. Not yet. But she'd find one. She had to. The next 3 weeks were purgatory. They kept working the ranch because the alternative was sitting around waiting for disaster. But the trial hung over everything, poisoning every small victory. Eliza researched what she could, asking questions in town, trying to understand territorial law. What she learned wasn't encouraging. Cattle theft was serious. If convicted, Cole could face years in prison. And without him, the ranch would fail. She couldn't run it alone. Shaw knew that. This was his endgame. She tried to find witnesses, anyone who could testify to Shaw's harassment, his pattern of intimidation. But fear was a powerful motivator. The people who'd been friendly went quiet when she asked for help. No one wanted to cross Shaw. Not publicly. Not where it mattered. The night before the trial, Cole and Eliza sat up late, not talking much, just being together while they could. "If this goes bad," Cole started. "It won't. If it does, you need to sell. Take what you can get and go somewhere else. Start over." "I'm not leaving." Eliza said, "I'm not leaving," she repeated, her voice hard. "This is our land, our life. I'm not giving it up." He looked at her in the lamplight, seeing the woman she'd become over these brutal months. Harder, tougher, but somehow more herself than ever. "How'd I get so lucky?" he asked quietly. "Lucky?" She laughed, bitter. "We're facing a rigged trial and possible prison time." "Yeah, but I'm not facing it alone." She took his hand, holding tight. "No, you're not." The trial was held in the town hall with Judge Morrison presiding. He was an old man, weathered and stern, reportedly fair, but also reportedly practical. He knew how things worked in the territory. He knew who had power and who didn't. Shaw showed up with 2 lawyers and 3 witnesses, all his men, all ready to swear they'd seen Cole scatter the herd. Cole had no lawyer, no witnesses, just Eliza sitting in the front row with quiet fury in her eyes. The prosecution went first. Shaw's lawyers painted Cole as a desperate man, failing rancher, driven to crime by poverty and spite. The witnesses testified one by one, describing the night in question, identifying Cole definitively. It was efficient, brutal, almost certainly coordinated and rehearsed. When it was Cole's turn, he stood and told the truth. Yes, he'd scattered the herd. Yes, it was deliberate. But it was also self-defense against a pattern of harassment that the law had done nothing to stop. Marcus Shaw burned my chicken coop, Cole said flatly, killed half my stock, threatened my partner, cut my fences, stole my water. I went to the sheriff twice. Nothing was done. So I took matters into my own hands. Do you have proof of any of this? The judge asked. Just my word. And Ms. Rowan's? Yes? Judge Morrison looked at Eliza. You were present for the alleged harassment. Yes, Your Honor. And the cattle scattering? She hesitated. Lying under oath was a crime, but telling the truth would condemn them both. I was home that night, she said carefully. I don't know where Mr. Maddox was. It was a thin protection, but it was something. The judge studied them both for a long moment. Then he called a recess. They waited outside while he deliberated. Eliza paced. Cole sat on the steps, head in his hands. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, they were called back in. Judge Morrison looked tired, like this case had aged him. Mr. Maddox, he said, the evidence against you is substantial. However, Mr. Shaw's reputation in this territory is also well known. I'm inclined to believe there's more to this story than cattle theft. Hope flickered in Eliza's chest. That said, the judge continued, you've admitted to a crime. I can't overlook that. So here's my ruling. Guilty of disturbing livestock. Sentence. Restitution to Mr. Shaw in the amount of $50 and 6 months probation. If you stay out of trouble for 6 months, the conviction disappears from your record. It was a slap on the wrist. A gift, really, considering what it could have been. Shaw's lawyers erupted in protest. The judge banged his gavel. My ruling stands. This court is adjourned. Outside in the dusty street, Cole and Eliza stood together, processing their reprieve. $50, Cole said. That's half our savings. But you're free. For now. Shaw emerged from the hall, his face dark with rage. He walked straight up to them, his men trailing behind. This isn't over, he said. It is for me, Cole replied. I'm done fighting you, Shaw. But I'm also done running. You think that judge saved you? He just delayed the inevitable. Maybe. Or maybe you finally met someone who doesn't scare easy. Shaw's eyes flicked to Eliza. You should have stayed east, girl. Would have lived longer. Is that a threat? Eliza asked calmly. It's a fact. Then we'll see who lives longer. She smiled, cold and sharp. Because we're not going anywhere. Shaw stared at her, and for just a moment, something like respect crossed his face. Then it hardened again, and he walked away, his men following. Eliza and Cole walked back to the wagon, their reprieve feeling both enormous and fragile. 6 months, Cole said. We have to stay clean for 6 months. We will. And then what? Shaw's not going to forget this. Then we make sure we're too strong to push around. Eliza climbed onto the wagon seat. We build fast, we build smart, and we make this ranch into something that can't be taken. Cole joined her, snapping the reins. You really believe that's possible? I have to. They rode home in the long afternoon light, past fields they'd planted, animals they'd raised, a future they were fighting for one brutal day at a time. The ranch waited, indifferent to their victories and losses, demanding everything they had and then some. But they gave it anyway, because that's what survival looked like. Not clean or easy or fair, just constant, relentless, refusing to quit. Summer burned through July with the kind of heat that made thinking difficult and working dangerous. But they worked anyway, because stopping meant losing ground they couldn't afford to give up. The garden produced more than Eliza had dared hope, enough to sell, enough to preserve, enough to prove that her methods weren't just luck. Cole expanded the irrigation system, digging ditches by hand until his shoulders screamed, channeling precious water where it would do the most good. The chickens thrived. 60 birds now, organized into 3 distinct operations: layers for eggs, broilers for meat, breeders for expansion. Eliza kept meticulous records in a leather notebook she'd bought with egg money, tracking which birds produced best, which bloodlines were worth keeping. It was scientific, methodical, the kind of farming most ranchers in the territory would have called unnecessary. But it worked. Their savings crept back up. Not quickly. The $50 they'd paid Shaw still stung, but steadily. $15. 23. 31. Each coin represented hours of work, small victories, the stubborn accumulation of something that looked almost like security. "We need to talk about cattle," Cole said one evening in early August. Eliza looked up from her notebook. "We've been through this. I know, but hear me out." He spread his calculations across the table. "If we buy 2 cows and a bull now, good breeding stock, we can have calves by next summer. Build a herd over 2-3 years. Real cattle operation, not just chickens and vegetables." "How much?" $120 for the stock I want, another $30 for feed to get them through winter. They had $47 saved. "We're $100 short," Eliza said. "I know, but Peter said he'd extend credit. And the Johnsons, that young couple from the church social, they said they'd loan us $50 if we needed it." "You asked them?" "No, they offered." Cole leaned back. "People are starting to see what we're doing here. Some of them want to help." Eliza studied the numbers, her practical mind warring with her instinct for caution. Debt was dangerous. It gave people leverage, and leverage was just another word for control. But Cole was right. They couldn't stay small forever. Shaw wouldn't let them. "If we do this," she said slowly, "we need guarantees. Written contracts, clear terms. I'm not trusting handshakes when there's this much money involved." "Agreed. And we need a backup plan. If the cattle don't produce, if something goes wrong, then we sell them at a loss and rebuild. Same as always." She looked at him across the table, seeing the determination in his face. This wasn't just about cattle. It was about claiming their place in the territory, proving they belonged among the established ranchers. "All right," she said, "let's do it." They bought the cattle in mid-August from a rancher 2 territories over, a man with a reputation for honest stock and fair dealing. 2 pregnant cows, both young, both healthy, and a bull with good conformation and a calm temperament. They cost exactly $120, and the deal emptied their savings and put them in debt for the first time. Getting the animals home took 3 days. They moved slowly, letting the cattle graze and rest, learning their personalities. The bull was steady, unbothered by much. The cows were skittish but smart, already showing signs of their pregnancies. When they finally drove them onto Maddox land and into the reinforced north pasture, Eliza felt something shift. This was real now. They weren't playing at ranching anymore. They were ranchers. "They're beautiful," she said, watching the cattle settle. Cole stood beside her, his arm brushing hers. "They're ours." The word hung between them, weighted with meaning beyond livestock. Somewhere along the way, mine had become ours, and neither of them had noticed the change until it was already done. "We should get married," Cole said abruptly. Eliza turned to stare at him. "What?" "Married. Properly. Not because of what people think, but because—" He struggled for words. "Because it feels wrong not to." "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard." "It's the only proposal you've ever heard." She laughed despite herself. "Fair point. Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe. Ask me again when you figured out how to do it properly." He grinned, and in that moment he looked younger, less haunted by the ghosts that had driven him into isolation. "I'll work on it." They walked back to the house as the sun dropped toward the mountains, painting the sky in colors that had no names. The ranch spread around them, imperfect, difficult, wholly theirs. It wasn't much, but it was enough. September brought the first whispers of autumn and the first signs of trouble. Cole noticed it first, fence posts broken in the south pasture, not weathered or fallen but deliberately kicked down. Then tools went missing from the barn. Small things, easy to dismiss as misplaced, but they weren't misplaced. They were stolen. "Shaw," Eliza said flatly, Maybe. Or just someone taking advantage. Cole studied the broken fence. Could be drifters. Could be kids from town. You don't believe that? No, but I can't prove otherwise. They repaired the damage and increased their vigilance. Cole started sleeping light, rifle within reach. Eliza took to locking the chicken coops at night, checking them multiple times before bed. The easy rhythm they'd found over summer fractured into constant alertness. A week later, one of the pregnant cows disappeared. They found the gap in the fence at dawn, cut wire, fresh tracks leading north. Cole saddled his horse immediately, Eliza right behind him. "You should stay here," he said. "Not a chance." They tracked the cow for 3 hours, following broken grass and occasional hoofprints across territory that grew increasingly unfamiliar. The trail led toward Shaw's land, which surprised exactly no one. They found her in a gully 5 miles from home, standing over something that made Eliza's stomach drop. A dead calf. Born too early, too small to survive. The cow lowed mournfully, refusing to leave the body. Cole dismounted and approached slowly, speaking soft words that meant nothing but sounded like comfort. The cow led him near, her grief transcending the usual wariness of livestock. "She aborted," Cole said quietly. "The stress of being driven, probably. Or someone made her abort." Eliza's voice was tight. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. They couldn't prove it, but they didn't need proof to know. Getting the cow home took hours. She fought them, wanting to stay with her dead calf, not understanding that staying meant dying herself. Eventually, exhaustion won, and she followed Cole's horse in a stumbling walk that felt like defeat. Back at the ranch, they settled her in the barn and stood in the yard, both too angry and tired to speak. "This is escalating," Eliza said finally. "Yeah." Shaw's probation warning didn't mean anything. "No." "So what do we do?" Cole looked at her, his face hard. "We survive it. That's all we can do." But surviving wasn't enough anymore, and they both knew it. The second cow gave birth in late September, a healthy bull calf that dropped in the middle of a cold night and was standing within an hour. Eliza and Cole watched from the fence as the calf took its first wobbling steps, the mother licking it clean with dedicated efficiency. "1 out of 2, Cole said. "Better than none." "Barely." He turned away from the fence. "We needed both calves. One's not going to build a herd fast enough." "Then we make it work with one." "How? Magic?" Eliza didn't answer. There wasn't an answer. They were behind schedule, undercapitalized, and facing an enemy who wouldn't quit. The math was brutal and getting worse. October brought hard decisions. They were out of money again. The cattle purchase and Shaw's restitution had drained them, and the chicken operation, successful as it was, couldn't cover everything. They needed cash, and they needed it now. "We could sell the bull calf," Cole suggested without enthusiasm. "No, we need him for breeding. Not for 2 years, we don't." "We're not selling him." Eliza's voice was final. "That's short-sighted, and you know it." "Then what? We can't eat our own breeding stock, can't sell what we need. What does that leave?" She'd been thinking about this for days, hating the answer but unable to find a better one. "We sell some of the chickens, the older layers, the ones past peak production." Cole shook his head. "That's your operation. I'm not asking you to—" "You're not asking, I'm offering." She met his eyes. "This is what partnership means. We share the losses as much as the wins." They culled 20 birds, keeping only the best producers and youngest stock. Eliza processed them herself, methodical and efficient, refusing to let sentiment slow her down. The meat went to the hotel and the butcher in town, bringing in $30 that felt like blood money. "I'm sorry," Cole said that night. "Don't be. I knew what I was signing up for." "Did you?" "Because sometimes I wonder if either of us knew what we were getting into." Eliza looked around the small house, at the life they'd built through sheer stubbornness. "Probably not. But we're here anyway." "Any regrets?" She considered lying, giving him the answer he wanted, but they'd gone too far for comfortable lies. "Some days," she admitted. "On the bad days, when everything's breaking and nothing works and I'm so tired I can't think straight. Yeah, I regret it. I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd stayed east, if I'd found some other path. And on the good days?" "On the good days, I can't imagine being anywhere else." He reached across the table and took her hand, the gesture so natural now that neither of them questioned it. They sat like that for a long time, bound by choices made and consequences accepted, too deep into this life to find their way back out. The first snow came in early November, weeks ahead of schedule. They woke to white covering everything, beautiful and threatening. Cole went out immediately to check the animals while Eliza built up the fire and started breakfast. The cattle were fine, huddled together for warmth. The chickens were fine, their new coop solid against the weather. But the early snow was a warning. Winter was coming hard, and they weren't ready. They spent the next 2 weeks in frantic preparation, cutting wood until their arms burned, reinforcing buildings against wind and heavy snow, moving supplies closer to the house, organizing, planning, trying to anticipate every possible failure. The work was endless and exhausting. They fell into bed each night too tired to talk, too tired to do anything but sleep and wake and work again. The partnership that had felt solid in summer strained under the weight of approaching winter. They started snapping at each other over small things. Cole criticized the way Eliza organized the pantry. Eliza complained about Cole leaving tools out. The tiny house felt smaller every day, claustrophobic with stress and fear and too much togetherness. "We need more wood," Cole said one morning. "I know. I mean it. We're short." "I said I know." Eliza's voice was sharp. "What do you want me to do? Grow trees? I want you to understand that if we run out of firewood in January, we freeze. I understand just fine. Stop treating me like I'm stupid. I'm not." "You are. You do it all the time, explaining things I already know, double-checking my work like I'm a child." Cole stared at her. "That's not what I'm doing." "Then what are you doing?" "I'm trying to keep us alive. So am I." She stood up, her chair scraping loud against the floor. "I've been trying to keep us alive since the day I got here. I've worked myself half to death building this place, and you still look at me like I'm some fragile city girl who's going to break at the first real challenge. That's not true. Isn't it? Be honest, Cole. Do you really see me as an equal? Or am I just someone you're protecting until this all falls apart?" The question hung between them, sharp and dangerous. Cole opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't know," he said finally. "I'm trying to. But I've been alone so long, I don't know how to not be the only one responsible." It was honest, brutally so, and somehow the honesty diffused the fight. Eliza sat back down, the anger draining into exhaustion. "We can't keep doing this, fighting each other when we should be fighting the land." "I know. Then trust me. Actually trust me, not just say you do." "I'm trying." "Try harder." They sat in strained silence while breakfast burned on the stove. Eventually, Cole got up and scraped the ruined eggs into the waste bucket. Eliza made fresh coffee. They ate in quiet, not comfortable but not hostile either. That afternoon, Cole taught her to split wood. Not by doing it himself while she watched, but by putting the axe in her hands and letting her learn through doing. She was terrible at first, the blade glancing off, the logs rolling away. But she kept trying, and eventually she got the rhythm of it. The placement, the angle, the follow-through. When she split her first log clean through, Cole nodded approval. "You're learning. About time." "No, I mean it." He looked at her, really looked at her. "I do trust you. I'm just scared of losing you, like I lost them." Sarah and Jamie, the ghosts he'd been running from for 3 years. "I'm not them," Eliza said gently, "and this isn't then. We're stronger now." "Are we?" "We have to be." He picked up his own axe and went back to work, and after a moment she joined him. They split wood until dusk, working in tandem, the rhythm of it almost meditative. It wasn't perfect, but it was partnership. The blizzard hit the first week of December. It came fast, a wall of white that swallowed the world. Eliza had been checking the chickens when the wind shifted, and suddenly she couldn't see 10 feet. She stumbled back toward the house, using the rope Cole had strung from barn to porch, her hands numb even through gloves. Inside, Cole was already shutting windows, banking the fire high. "This is bad." "How bad?" 3 days, maybe 4? We're stuck." They'd prepared for this. Food stocked, wood piled, animals secure. But preparation didn't make the reality less terrifying. The wind howled like something alive and angry, rattling the house, piling snow against the walls in drifts that climbed higher by the hour. By nightfall, they couldn't see the barn. "The animals," Eliza started, "are fine. They've got shelter and feed. We can't help them until this breaks. What if it doesn't break? It will. But his voice lacked certainty. They rationed the firewood carefully, keeping the house warm but not wasteful. They ate simple meals, beans, biscuits, dried meat. They tried to sleep, but the storm made rest impossible. The noise was constant, overwhelming, a reminder of how small they were against the land's violence. On the second day, part of the chicken coop roof blew off. They heard it go, a sharp crack followed by the shriek of tearing wood. Cole looked at Eliza, his face grim. I have to fix it. You'll die out there. The birds will die if I don't. Then we both go. Eliza, both or neither, choose. He chose both. They roped themselves together and stepped into the storm. The cold was immediate and brutal, stealing breath, burning exposed skin. Visibility was measured in inches. They followed the guide rope to the barn, then navigated by memory and faith toward the damaged coop. The birds were panicking, feathers flying, the bitter wind pouring through the gap in the roof. Cole climbed up, fighting for purchase on ice-slick wood, while Eliza steadied the ladder and handed up boards. Her fingers were numb. Her face felt frozen. She couldn't feel her feet anymore, but they got the roof patched. Not perfect, but enough to keep the worst of the storm out. Getting back to the house was harder than leaving it. The wind had shifted, disorienting them. Cole pulled them along the rope, hand over hand, while Eliza followed in his wake. Twice she lost her footing. Twice he caught her. When they finally stumbled through the door, they collapsed on the floor, too cold to move. It took an hour to thaw out. They stripped off frozen clothes with shaking hands, wrapped themselves in every blanket they owned, and huddled by the fire until feeling returned in painful stages. That was stupid, Eliza said, through chattering teeth. Yeah. We could have died. Yeah. The birds better appreciate it, Cole laughed, slightly hysterical. They won't. I know. They fell asleep there on the floor, wrapped together for warmth, too exhausted to make it to the bed. When Eliza woke hours later, she found Cole watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. You're incredible. You know that? I'm freezing and half dead, that's what I know. You went out in that storm to save chickens, without hesitation. So did you. Yeah, but I'm used to this. He trailed off. I'm what? You're everything I didn't know I needed. It wasn't a practiced speech, wasn't romantic or smooth, but it was true. And truth mattered more than poetry. Eliza reached up and touched his face. Ask me again. What? What you asked before, in August. Ask me again. Cole understood immediately. Marry me. Yes. Just like that? Just like that. He kissed her then, clumsy and careful, both of them still wrapped in blankets, the storm raging outside. It wasn't the proposal she'd imagined as a girl back east. It was better. It was real. The storm broke on the fourth day. They emerged into a world transformed. Snow everywhere, sculptured into drifts and waves, beautiful and deadly. The first order of business was checking the animals. The cattle were fine, huddled in the lee of the barn. The calf was fine, already playing in the snow with the energy only young things possess. The chickens had survived, traumatized but alive. They'd lost part of the garden fence and a section of corral, but considering the violence of the storm, they'd gotten off light. We were lucky, Cole said. Luck had nothing to do with it. We prepared. Some of both, maybe. They spent the next week digging out, repairing damage, assessing losses. The work was hard but manageable. They fell back into their rhythm, but something had changed. The fight before the storm, the honesty that came from it, the proposal that followed, all of it had shifted their foundation. They decided to marry before Christmas. Nothing fancy, just the justice of the peace in town, maybe dinner at the hotel after, but official, legal, binding. We should tell people, Eliza said. Why? Because it's polite, and because... She hesitated. Because I want them to know. I want everyone to know you chose me, and I chose you. Cole smiled. All right, we'll tell people. They went to town the next week, ostensibly for supplies, but really to make their announcement. The reaction was mixed. Some people were pleased. The blacksmith's wife hugged Eliza. The young couple offered congratulations. Others were colder, The Ladies' Aid Society smiling tight smiles that promised future judgment. Shaw heard about it in the saloon and laughed loud enough for half the town to hear. Maddox is finally making an honest woman of her. Only took him a year. Cole heard about it from Peters. He said that where I could hear? Yeah. And? And nothing. Let him talk. We've got better things to do. But the comment ate at Cole for days. The implication that Eliza's honor was something to joke about, that their partnership was entertainment for men like Shaw. He wanted to confront Shaw, to make him take it back. But that's what Shaw wanted. Another public fight, another chance to make Cole look unstable. So Cole did nothing, and hated every minute of it. The wedding was set for December 20th. 3 days before, disaster struck. Cole was working in the north pasture when he saw riders approaching. 5 of them, moving fast. He recognized Shaw in the lead and felt his stomach drop. Shaw had honored the judge's probation, barely, but 6 months had passed. The leash was off. Cole rode to meet them, intercepting them before they reached the house. This is still private property. Just being neighborly, Shaw said, his smile predatory. Heard you're getting hitched. Wanted to offer congratulations. You've offered. Now leave. See, that's the problem, Maddox. Your manners. Always so unfriendly. Shaw leaned forward in his saddle. I'm trying to be nice here, trying to let bygones be bygones, but you keep pushing. I'm not pushing anything. I'm asking you to respect my boundaries. Your boundaries? Shaw looked around at the land. Tell me something. How long you think you can hold on to this place? Year, 2? As long as it takes. That's admirable. Stupid, but admirable. Shaw's smile disappeared. Here's the truth, Maddox. This land's wasted on you. Always has been. You're a dead man playing at living, and that girl of yours is just delaying the inevitable. Get off my land. I'm going. But remember this conversation when it all comes apart. When she realizes she hitched herself to a sinking ship. When you're standing in the ruins of everything you tried to build. Shaw turned his horse. I'll be here to pick up the pieces, and I won't be generous. He rode off, his men following, leaving Cole standing in the trampled snow with rage building in his chest. When he got back to the house, Eliza took one look at his face and knew. Shaw? Yeah. What did he say? Cole told her word for word. When he finished, Eliza was quiet for a long moment. He's wrong, she said finally. Is he? About you being a dead man? Yes. About this place failing? Yes. About me regretting this? She stepped close, taking his hands. Especially about that. Eliza, he's not going to stop. Ever. Marrying me means signing up for that fight permanently. I know. You could still... No? Her voice was firm. We're past that. We've been past that for months. This is my fight as much as yours now. I don't want you hurt because of me. Then we'll make sure neither of us gets hurt, together. He pulled her close, holding tight, trying to believe her confidence was justified. But Shaw's words echoed in his head, poisonous and persistent. What if he was right? What if Cole was dragging Eliza down with him? What if the smart thing was to let her go, set her free before the whole thing collapsed? Eliza felt him pulling away emotionally even as he held her physically. Stop it. Stop what? Whatever you're thinking, I can feel it. You're trying to protect me by pushing me away. Maybe that's the smart play. It's not. The smart play is standing together, fighting together. She pulled back to look him in the eye. I didn't survive this long just to quit 3 days before we make it official. What if Shaw's right? Then we fail, but we fail together, and at least we'll know we tried. She touched his face. Stop trying to be noble. Just be here with me. So he stopped fighting it. Stopped trying to protect her from consequences she'd already chosen. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, let himself trust that someone else could carry weight alongside him. The wedding happened on a cold, clear December morning. They dressed in their best. Cole in a suit he'd worn to Sarah's funeral, Eliza in a dress she'd made herself from fabric bought with egg money. They rode to town together, the wagon rattling over frozen ground, neither of them talking much. Words felt unnecessary. The justice of the peace performed the ceremony in his office, with the blacksmith's wife and her husband serving as witnesses. It took 5 minutes. No music, no flowers, no crowd. Just vows spoken clearly and signed papers that made it legal. When it was done, They walked out into the winter sun as husband and wife, and Eliza felt something settle in her chest. This was real now. Permanent. Whatever came next, they'd face it bound by more than just shared work and mutual stubbornness. They had dinner at the hotel, steak and potatoes and pie, a luxury they couldn't afford, but bought anyway because some moments demanded celebration. Halfway through the meal, Peter showed up with a bottle of whiskey and glasses for toasting. Then the young couple arrived with congratulations. Then others, people who'd watched their fight and decided it was worth supporting. Even the sheriff stopped by, tipping his hat. "Congratulations, Mrs. Maddox." The name hit Eliza like a revelation. Mrs. Maddox. Not Miss Rowan anymore. She'd become someone new without even realizing the transformation was complete. They made it home by dusk, both slightly drunk from the whiskey, laughing about something stupid Peters had said. The ranch looked peaceful in the fading light, the snow covering the scars and hard edges, making everything beautiful. Cole helped Eliza down from the wagon, then lifted her clear off the ground, carrying her toward the house. "What are you doing?" she asked, laughing. "Threshold, it's tradition. We've been living together for a year." "So? It's still tradition." He carried her inside and set her down gently, and they stood in their small house, not just his anymore, or hers, but genuinely theirs, and looked at each other with something like wonder. "We did it," Eliza said. "Yeah, we did. Now what?" "Now we build." They made it through Christmas with more celebration than either had known in years. A goose from town, vegetables from their stores, a cake Eliza baked that was almost good. They exchanged small gifts. Cole gave her a new leather notebook for her chicken records. She gave him a knife she'd had the blacksmith make, perfectly balanced for ranch work. It was simple. It was enough. New Year arrived with promises neither of them believed, but both wanted to. This year would be better. This year they'd prosper. This year Shaw would leave them alone. January proved them wrong on all counts. The cold came hard and stayed, temperatures dropping below zero and holding there. The cattle struggled, burning energy just staying warm. The chickens stopped laying almost entirely, reserving resources for survival. The garden, of course, was dead until spring. Money got tight again. Then tighter. They stopped going to town except for absolute necessities. They rationed food, stretching meals thin. They burned less wood, keeping the house just warm enough to keep pipes from freezing. And then, in late January, both pregnant cows came down sick. Cole found them in the morning, feverish and refusing to eat. He ran for the house, his face grim. "We need the veterinarian." "We can't afford the veterinarian." "We can't afford not to. If those cows die, we lose everything we've built." It was true. The cattle represented their future, their expansion, their pathway out of subsistence farming. Losing them meant starting over. Eliza counted their money, $34. The vet charged $10 just to come out, more for treatment. "Do it," she said. The veterinarian arrived 2 days later, 2 days during which Eliza and Cole kept the cows warm, tried to get them to drink, prayed to forces they didn't believe in for mercy that wasn't coming. Doc Harrison was an older man with steady hands and seen-it-all eyes. He examined both cows carefully, his face revealing nothing. When he finished, he stood and looked at them with an expression that killed hope before words could. "Shipping fever," he said. "Probably caught it from Shaw's herd when they came through. It's advanced." "Can you treat it?" Cole asked. "I can try, but I won't lie to you. Odds aren't good. These animals are weak, pregnant, stressed. The disease has probably already crossed to the calves." "Try anyway," Eliza said. He did. $10 for the visit, another $8 for medicine. He left instructions: keep them warm, get fluids in them, watch for worsening symptoms. They followed his orders religiously. Eliza moved into the barn, sleeping in the hay, checking the cows every few hours. Cole kept the house running, cooking simple meals and bringing them to her, sitting with her during the long nights when the cow's breathing sounded like death arriving slow. The first cow died on January 28th. She went down in the morning, peacefully, just stopped breathing between one moment and the next. The calf was already dead inside her. They buried her on the hillside near Sarah and Jamie, the ground so frozen that digging took most of the day. Neither of them cried. They were too tired, too numb, too aware that crying was another luxury they couldn't afford. The second cow held on for 3 more days. then joined the first. 2 graves on the hillside now. 2 cows and 2 calves that represented 6 months of work, $120 in purchase price, another $50 in feed and care. All gone. Cole and Eliza stood in the barn afterward, looking at the empty stalls. "We're finished," Cole said. "No, we're not." "Eliza, we just lost everything. We lost the cattle. We still have the chickens, the garden, each other. That's not enough." "Then we make it enough." She turned to face him. "You want to give up? Fine. Tell me you want to give up, and I'll stand with you in that too. But if you want to keep fighting, then we keep fighting." He looked at her, this woman who'd crossed half a continent on a promise, who'd survived fire and storms and Shaw's endless harassment, who'd married him knowing exactly how hard this life would be. "I don't want to quit," he said quietly. "Then we don't quit." But that night, alone in their bed while Eliza slept, Cole stared at the ceiling and wondered if wanting wasn't enough. If sometimes the land just broke you, no matter how hard you fought. If Shaw was right, and they were just delaying inevitable failure. He'd lost before. Lost Sarah and Jamie, lost pieces of himself he'd never get back. Could he survive losing again? Could he watch Eliza break the way he'd broken, watch this place drain the life from her? He didn't know. But come morning, he got up anyway, fed the chickens, checked the fences, did the work because work was all there was. And beside him, Eliza did the same, relentless, determined, refusing to acknowledge the possibility of defeat. They'd survived winter before. They'd survived this one too. Or they'd die trying. February ground them down to nothing. They had $14 left. $14 between survival and whatever came after survival when you'd run out of options. The chickens were barely producing, cold, stressed, and molting, giving them maybe a dozen eggs a week when they needed 3 times that just to break even. The garden was frozen solid and would stay that way until April at the earliest. Their credit was stretched thin everywhere it existed. Cole stopped talking much. He did his work with mechanical efficiency, but the light had gone out of him. Eliza watched him retreat inward, back to that place he'd been when she first arrived, alone even when standing right next to her. "We need a new plan," she said one morning over watery coffee. "There is no new plan. We're finished." "Stop saying that. It's true. We lost the cattle. We're out of money. Winter's not even half over." He set down his cup. "Maybe we should sell, take whatever Shaw offers and start somewhere else." "You don't mean that." "Don't I? What's the point of staying? Pride?" "That's expensive pride, Eliza." She felt something crack inside her chest. Not anger. She'd burned through anger weeks ago. This was something colder, harder. The realization that Cole had already quit in his head, and now he was just waiting for her to accept it. "Fine," she said quietly. He looked up, surprised. "Fine. If you want to sell, we'll sell. If you want to give Shaw everything we fought for, we'll do that." She stood up. "But I'm not helping you. That's your choice to make." "Eliza, I mean it. You want to surrender, you do it alone. I'll be in the barn." She walked out before he could respond, her hands shaking with the effort of not screaming. She'd given up everything to build this life, her past, her safety, any chance at an easy future, and Cole was ready to throw it away because winter got hard. In the barn, she sat with the chickens and let herself feel it all. The exhaustion, the fear, the creeping certainty that maybe Cole was right, maybe they were just delaying the inevitable. But beneath all that was something stubborn and unbreakable, a refusal to let Shaw win, to let the land win, to let any of it win. She'd survived worse than this. She'd survived this too. Cole found her an hour later. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down in the hay beside her. "I'm scared," he said finally. "I know. I keep seeing Sarah's face, keep remembering what it felt like to lose everything. And I think if we stay, if we keep fighting, I'm going to watch you die the way I watched her die. Slowly. From this place, taking everything until there's nothing left." Eliza turned to look at him. His face was haggard, older than his years. She saw the grief in him, raw and recent despite the years that had passed. "I'm not Sarah," she said gently. "I know that. Do you? Because you're treating me like I'm fragile, like I'm going to break. Everyone breaks eventually. Maybe, but not today." She took his hand. "Cole, I understand being scared, But fear can't be what makes our decisions. We have to be smarter than that. What if smart means leaving? Then we leave. But not until we've tried everything else first. He looked at their joined hands, at the calluses they'd both earned, at the evidence of work that wouldn't quit even when minds did. "What do you suggest?" he asked. "I suggest we stop thinking about what we lost and start thinking about what we still have." Over the next 2 days, they took inventory, real inventory, not the kind that focused on deficits, but the kind that looked for possibilities. They had 43 chickens, not producing much now, but they'd come back when spring arrived. They had seed saved from last year's garden, carefully stored and organized by type. They had tools, mostly functional. They had a house, a barn, outbuildings. They had fencing that worked despite needing repairs. They had water rights that Shaw wanted badly enough to harass them for years. Most importantly, they had knowledge. Eliza's detailed record showed exactly which crops did best in this climate, which chicken breeds thrived, what worked and what didn't. That information was worth more than cattle because it was earned through trial and failure. "We expand the chicken operation," Eliza said, her pencil moving across paper as she calculated. "Double it by summer. Focus on eggs first, meat birds second. The margin is smaller, but the return is faster. That takes capital we don't have. So we get creative." She looked up. "Peter's offered credit before. The Johnsons offered a loan. We tap every resource we have, rebuild fast, come out of spring strong enough that Shaw can't push us around anymore. And if we can't pay it back, then we lose. But at least we'll lose trying instead of just giving up." Cole studied her calculations, seeing the logic even if he didn't trust it. "This is a big risk. Bigger than marrying a stranger and crossing half a country?" "Fair point. So we do it?" He thought about Sarah, about Jamie, about all the ways life could go wrong. Then he looked at Eliza, at the woman who'd proven stronger than anyone had expected, and made a choice. "Yeah, we do it." They went to town the next day, despite the cold, despite having barely enough money for supplies. Peters greeted them with his usual cautious friendliness, but his eyes assessed them like he was calculating risks. "Heard you lost your cattle," he said. "Shame. Good animals." "They were," Cole agreed. "We're here about that credit you mentioned." Peters nodded slowly. "How much are you thinking?" Eliza laid out her plan. $50 for new chickens and supplies, another $20 for garden seed and tools, payable over 6 months with modest interest. "That's ambitious," Peters said carefully. "It's necessary. And if you can't pay, we will." He looked between them, seeing something that made him nod. "All right, but I need collateral, something real." "The water rights," Cole said. "If we default, they're yours." It was their most valuable asset, the one thing Shaw had been after for years. Putting it up as collateral was insane. It was also the only thing Peters would accept. "Deal," Peters said, and they shook on it. Next stop was the Johnsons. The young couple lived in a small house on the edge of town, neat and well kept despite their own limited means. Margaret Johnson answered the door, her belly round with pregnancy. "Eliza, Cole, come in, please." They explained what they needed. $30, same terms as Peters, no collateral beyond their word. Thomas Johnson didn't hesitate. "Of course. You helped us when we first got here, gave us advice on setting up our place. We're happy to return the favor." "You sure?" Cole asked. "This is risky money." "All money's risky out here," Thomas said. "At least we're betting on people we believe in." They left with the $30 and a lump in Eliza's throat. Kindness, when you'd grown used to hostility, hit different. By the end of the week, they had their capital, $114, borrowed, owed, carrying interest and obligation. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing the jump might kill you, but staying put definitely would. "Last chance to back out," Cole said. "Not backing out." "Then let's build something." They bought chickens first. 60 pullets, young hens just starting to lay, from 3 different breeders across 2 territories. Eliza had researched breeds obsessively, choosing for hardiness, egg production, and temperament. She organized them in detailed groups, keeping records that would have made a university professor proud. The garden prep started next. They spent March breaking ground as soon as the frost eased enough, turning soil that fought them every inch. Cole built raised beds for early crops, giving them better drainage and soil warmth. Eliza planted cold hardy greens first, lettuce, spinach, radishes, then moved to peas and onions as the temperature climbed. Every day was calculated risk. Plant too early, lose crops to frost. Plant too late, miss the growing window. They walked that knife edge with the kind of focus that came from knowing failure meant losing everything. The chickens started producing in early April. Not full production yet, but enough to matter. Eliza collected eggs twice daily, candled them for quality, packed them in careful crates. She'd developed a reputation in town for reliable product, and customers who'd tried her eggs kept coming back. The money started trickling in. Not a flood, never a flood, but steady enough to ease the constant panic. By late April, they were employing 2 teenage boys from town to help with the heavier work. Danny and Michael, brothers who needed money and didn't mind hard labor. They weren't charity cases. Cole paid them fair wages and expected fair work. But having extra hands meant Cole and Eliza could focus on the strategic work instead of drowning in maintenance. "This is starting to feel real," Eliza said one evening, reviewing their books. "Don't jinx it." "I'm not. We're actually building something that works." Cole looked around the property. The garden was coming in strong, neat rows of green pushing through dark soil. The chicken operation was organized like a small factory, efficient and profitable. The buildings were maintained, the fences repaired. It looked like a working ranch instead of a dying one. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We are." Shaw noticed too. He rode by in early May, ostensibly checking his own cattle, but really making sure the Maddox Ranch stayed in his sights. What he saw made him rein in his horse and stare. The transformation was obvious. Where before there'd been barely controlled decay, now there was order, purpose, success. He didn't stop, didn't say anything, just looked, his face calculating, then rode on. "He's going to make another move," Cole said, watching him go. "Let him. We're stronger now." "Are we?" "We're in debt up to our eyes, Eliza. One bad month and we lose everything." "Then we don't have a bad month." It wasn't confidence. It was determination wearing confidence's clothes. But sometimes pretending to be unbreakable was the same as actually being unbreakable. The garden exploded in June. Everything they'd planted came in stronger than expected. Potatoes, beans, carrots, turnips, cabbage, onions. Eliza harvested constantly, selling surplus to town, preserving what they could, feeding the rest to the chickens to improve egg quality. The chicken operation hit its stride. 100 birds now, laying consistently, producing 200 eggs a week. Eliza had contracts with the hotel, the boarding house, and 3 families in town. The meat birds were growing fast, ready for processing by month's end. They paid Peters back $30. Then they paid the Johnsons $15. The debt was shrinking, slowly but definitely. "We're going to make it," Eliza said one night, unable to keep the wonder from her voice. Cole touched wood, the table, the door frame, anything nearby. A superstition he'd inherited from his father. "Don't say that yet." "Why not?" "Because the land's listening, and it doesn't like people getting comfortable." He was right. The fire started on a Wednesday night in late June. Eliza smelled smoke first, that acrid stench that meant something wrong. She bolted from bed, Cole right behind her, and saw orange light through the window. Not the chicken coop this time. The barn. They ran. Cole grabbed buckets, Eliza pumped water, both of them moving with practiced efficiency. The boys, Danny and Michael, were sleeping in the bunkhouse, came running with more buckets. But the fire had a head start, and the old wood burned fast. They saved the horses. Got them out panicked and fighting, but out. The milk cow refused to move until Cole physically dragged her. By then the roof was catching, beams groaning. "Everyone out!" Cole shouted. They stumbled into the yard just as the roof collapsed inward, sending sparks into the dark sky. The barn burned for hours, too far gone to save. All they could do was keep the fire from spreading to other buildings. By dawn, only smoking ruins remained. They stood in the ash, exhausted and streaked with soot, looking at the destruction. "Shaw," Eliza said flatly. Maybe just bad luck." "You don't believe in bad luck." "No, I don't." Cole's jaw was tight. "But I can't prove Shaw did this. And without proof, accusing him just makes us look desperate." "We are desperate. Then we don't let him see it." The barn had held tools, feed, equipment. Not everything. They'd learned from the first fire to keep things distributed, but enough to hurt. The financial loss was substantial. The emotional cost was worse. Eliza wanted to scream, wanted to find Shaw and make him pay for every small cruelty, every act of sabotage. But Cole was right. Accusations without proof meant nothing. They had to be smarter. "We rebuild," she said. "With what money?" "I don't know yet, but we figure it out." They assessed the damage methodically. The barn was a total loss, maybe $200 to rebuild properly. The tools could be replaced for $30, the feed for $20. The temporary shelter for the animals would cost another $15. They had $63 saved. Not enough. "We could ask Peters for more credit," Eliza suggested without enthusiasm. "He won't give it. We're already leveraged to him for the water rights." Then what? Cole didn't answer immediately. He walked through the ruins, picking up pieces of metal that had survived the fire. Nails, hinges, anything salvageable. When he came back, his face was set. "We do it ourselves. Salvage what we can, buy only what we must. Build smaller, simpler, just enough to get through. That'll take weeks." "You have somewhere else to be?" They started that afternoon. Cole and the boys pulled down what remained of the barn's frame, salvaging every board that wasn't completely charred. Eliza organized supplies, prioritized needs, figured out what they absolutely required versus what they could improvise. The work was brutal. Demolition is hard enough. Doing it in summer heat while trying to save materials made it harder. But they pushed through, and by the end of the week, they had a pile of salvaged lumber and a plan for a new structure. The new barn went up slowly. Not the solid, spacious building they'd lost, but a functional shelter that would keep animals safe and equipment dry. Cole designed it lean, using every scrap of salvaged material. The boys worked without complaint, earning their pay through sweat and determination. Word spread through town about the fire. Some people offered sympathy. Others offered help, lumber donations, loan of tools, a few hours of labor. The blacksmith's wife brought food. Thomas Johnson showed up with his wagon full of supplies, refusing payment. "You do the same for us," he said simply. Even Peters extended their payment deadline by a month, interest-free. "Can't have my best egg supplier going under," he said gruffly. The kindness was overwhelming and unexpected. Eliza had grown so used to fighting that basic human decency felt like a miracle. "Maybe we're not as alone as we thought," she said to Cole. "Maybe not." The new barn was finished in 3 weeks. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. The horses had shelter, the cow had shelter, their salvaged tools had a dry place to live. It was enough. They celebrated with a simple meal, nothing fancy, just food they'd grown themselves and beer the boys had brought from town. They sat in the yard as the sun set, 4 people who'd built something real through shared work. "You ever think about quitting?" Michael asked, his young face serious. "Every day," Eliza admitted. "But you don't." "No, we don't." "Why not?" She looked at Cole, saw him looking back, and found her answer in his face. Because some things are worth fighting for," she said, "even when the fight seems impossible." Danny nodded like she'd said something profound. Maybe she had. Maybe the whole point of life was finding something worth the fight and refusing to let go. Shaw made his next move in August. He filed a claim with the Territorial Land Office, arguing that the Maddox property boundaries were incorrectly surveyed and that a significant portion, including the main water source, actually belonged to his holdings. The notice arrived by mail, official and threatening. Cole read it twice, his face getting darker with each pass. "He's trying to steal the land legally." "Can he do that?" Eliza asked. "If the survey's wrong, yes. And surveys out here are rough at best. Easy to challenge if you've got money for lawyers." "Do we have money for lawyers?" "No." They sat with that reality. Shaw had outmaneuvered them. Fighting him in court would cost hundreds of dollars they didn't have. Not fighting meant losing the water rights and probably the ranch itself. "We need to find the original survey," Cole said. "Prove the boundaries are correct." "Where would it be?" "Territorial Land Office in Helena, 2 days' ride." "Then we go." "Eliza, we can't both leave, not with the animals, the garden." "Then you go. I'll hold things here." He looked at her, worried. "Shaw might make a move while I'm gone." "Let him try." She met his eyes. "I'm not helpless, Cole. And I'm not alone anymore. The boys will be here, and I know how to use a rifle." He didn't like it, but he didn't have better options. Cole left the next morning, riding hard for Helena. Eliza watched him go, then turned to face the ranch with determination that masked fear. She was responsible now. If Shaw attacked, she'd have to handle it. The first 2 days passed without incident. Eliza worked alongside Danny and Michael, maintaining routines, keeping everything running. She made sure the rifle was always within reach, that the doors were locked at night, that someone was always awake and watching. On the third day, Shaw came. He rode up with 2 of his men, all of them armed. Eliza met them in the yard, rifle held low but ready. The boys flanked her, trying to look tough despite their youth. "Mrs. Maddox," Shaw said pleasantly. "Husband's not home. He'll be back." "That's fine. I can wait." He dismounted, deliberately casual. "Nice place you've got here. Be ashamed to lose it." "We're not losing anything. The land office might disagree. Survey challenges go my way more often than not." "We'll see." Shaw walked closer, his men staying mounted. "You know, I respect you, I really do. Most women would have quit by now, but you keep fighting. Is there a point to this?" "The point is, you're fighting the wrong battle. Your husband, he's dragging you down. He's a broken man. Everyone knows it. But you? You're smart, capable. You could do better." Eliza's grip tightened on the rifle. "Get to it, Shaw. Work for me instead. I'll pay good wages, give you actual security. You could run my whole operation, make real money instead of scratching dirt for scraps." It was tempting for exactly half a second. The promise of security, of steady pay, of not fighting every single day. Then she remembered who was making the offer. "No." "You sure? This place is going under. Everyone sees it but you." "I said no." Shaw's pleasant expression hardened. "You're making a mistake." "That's my right." "Your husband know you're this stubborn? He married me, didn't he?" Shaw laughed without humor. "Yeah, he did. Poor bastard." He remounted his horse. "When this place falls apart, and it will, don't come asking me for help. I'm done being generous." He rode off, his men following. Eliza stood in the yard until they were out of sight, then let herself shake. "That was incredible," Danny said, his voice awed. "That was stupid," Eliza corrected. "I just made an enemy angrier." "But you didn't back down." "No, I didn't." Because backing down wasn't an option. Not anymore. Not ever. Cole returned 2 days later with the original survey documents. They were clear, definitive. The boundaries were exactly where Cole had claimed. Shaw's challenge was baseless. "He knew it was baseless," Eliza said, reading the documents. "He just wanted to tie us up in legal fees." "Probably, but now we have proof." Cole looked exhausted from the hard ride, but satisfied. "We file these with the land office response. His challenge gets dismissed." "How much does filing cost?" $20. They had $38 left after buying supplies. Filing meant being broke again. But not filing meant losing everything. "Do it," Eliza said. Cole filed the response, and 2 weeks later Shaw's claim was dismissed. They'd won. It cost them almost everything they had, but they'd won. Summer faded into autumn with the ranch still standing. The chickens were producing well, the garden had yielded more than they'd hoped, and the new barn, while rough, kept everything functional. They'd survived Shaw's legal attack, his fire, his constant harassment. More importantly, they'd proven something to themselves. They weren't victims, they were fighters, and they were winning. In late September, Cole made a decision. "I'm giving you equal authority over the ranch," he said one evening. Eliza looked up from her ledgers. "What?" "Equal authority. Legal partnership. Whatever I decide, you decide. Whatever you want to do, you can do. This isn't my ranch with you helping. It's ours." "Cole, that's not necessary." "It is. You've earned it 10 times over, and more than that. I trust you. Actually trust you, not just say it. You're better at this than I am in a lot of ways, so it's time we made it official." Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. Not from sentiment, but from recognition. He saw her, really saw her, not as a helper or a wife, but as an equal partner in every sense. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me. You earned it." They drew up papers making her co-owner, filed them with the territorial office, made it as legal as anything could be on the frontier. The Maddox Ranch belonged to both of them now, in law and in fact. That night, lying in bed, Eliza felt something settle in her chest. This was home. Not because it was easy or safe or comfortable, but because it was theirs. Built through work and sacrifice and stubborn refusal to quit. I love you, she said into the darkness. Cole's arm tightened around her. I love you too. They'd said it before, but tonight it meant something deeper. Not just feeling, but choice. Not just romance, but partnership forged through fire and loss and small victories that added up to something that couldn't be broken. October brought the first real profits. After paying debts, covering expenses, and setting aside reserves, they had money left over. Not much, $43, but it was theirs, clear and free. Profit. What do you want to do with it? Cole asked. Eliza had been thinking about this for weeks. Save half. Invest the other half in spring expansion. That's practical. I'm a practical woman. Yeah, you are. He smiled. I'm lucky you answered my ad. I'm lucky you sent it. It was true. For all the hardship, for all the fights and failures and near disasters, neither of them would change it. This life was hard, but it was theirs. November came with the first snow, and this time they were ready. Wood stacked high, food preserved and stored, animals secure. They'd learned from the previous winter, and that knowledge made them stronger. They celebrated their first anniversary quietly, a year of marriage that felt like 10 years of living. Cole gave Eliza a pair of leather gloves he'd had the saddlemaker craft specifically for her small hands. She gave him a new hat to replace the battered one he'd been wearing since she arrived. We made it, Cole said. 1 year down, lifetime to go. You sure you want a lifetime of this? Eliza looked around their small house, warm and solid, despite the cold outside. Looked at the man who'd become her partner in every sense. Looked at the life they'd built through blood and sweat and sheer determination. Yeah, she said. I'm sure. Because this was what she'd come west for, even if she hadn't known it at the time. Not comfort or ease or security, but purpose, partnership, a life that mattered because they'd fought for it. The ranch stood against the winter, strong and defiant. And inside its walls, two people who'd started as strangers held each other and planned for spring, when they'd build even more, push even further, claim even more ground from a land that gave nothing freely. They'd survived. But survival wasn't enough anymore. Now they wanted to thrive. Spring came early that year, arriving in March with mud and possibility. Eliza stood in the garden plot, planning the expansion they'd been dreaming about all winter. Not just vegetables this time, fruit trees, berry bushes, a proper herb garden, things that took years to mature but promised decades of return. That's ambitious, Cole said, studying her sketches. Everything we do is ambitious. Fair point. They had $117 saved, real savings, not borrowed money or credit. It represented 18 months of brutal work, but it was theirs. Eliza wanted to invest $60 in the garden expansion. Cole wanted to buy breeding stock again, rebuild the cattle operation they'd lost. We can't do both, he said. Then we choose. They chose the garden. The cattle had nearly destroyed them once. The garden, for all its demands, had proven reliable. Sometimes the smart choice wasn't the bold one. It was the one you could actually execute. They planted apple trees first, 5 of them, varieties chosen for hardiness and staggered harvest times. Then cherry trees, plum trees, and a small grove of berry bushes along the south fence. It would be 3 years before they saw significant fruit, but 3 years was nothing compared to forever. The chicken operation expanded again. Eliza now ran 150 birds with scientific precision, tracking bloodlines, production rates, feed conversion ratios. She'd become known across 3 territories as the woman who raised the best layers in Montana. People came from miles away to buy her breeding stock. You could write a book about this, Cole said one evening, watching her update her records. Who'd read a book about chickens? Other chicken farmers. There's more of us than you'd think. She smiled at the us. Cole had gone from skeptical rancher to chicken enthusiast without even noticing the transition. He built coops now with the same pride he'd once reserved for horsework. April brought news that changed everything. The territorial government announced a new railway line coming through the region, with a depot planned 15 miles from their ranch. Property values were expected to triple. Businesses would follow. The territory would grow. Shaw heard the news the same day everyone else did, and 3 days later he showed up at the Maddox Ranch with an offer. $5,000, he said without preamble. Cash. For the whole property. Cole and Eliza exchanged glances. 5,000 was more money than they'd see in 10 years of ranching. It was security, freedom, the chance to start over somewhere easier. No, Eliza said. Shaw blinked. You didn't even discuss it. Don't need to. This land's not for sale. You're being foolish. That railway's going to change everything. Property values will shoot up, but so will costs. Taxes, regulations, you'll be squeezed out eventually anyway. Maybe, Cole said, but we'll be squeezed out of something we own, not something we sold. Shaw's jaw tightened. I'm trying to be fair here. No, you're not. You're trying to buy cheap what you couldn't take by force. Eliza stepped forward. The answer's no. It'll always be no. Stop asking. Shaw looked at them both, and something shifted in his expression. Not respect exactly, but acknowledgement. They weren't victims anymore, and he couldn't pretend they were. You're going to regret this, he said, but it lacked his usual venom. We've regretted harder things and survived, Cole replied. Shaw left without another word. They watched him ride away, and Eliza felt something lift from her shoulders. He'd keep trying, probably. Men like Shaw didn't quit. But he'd lost the power to scare them, and that made all the difference. $5,000, Cole said quietly. That's a lot of money to turn down. You want to take it? No. But I wanted you to know what you were refusing. I know exactly what I was refusing. I was refusing to let him win. Cole pulled her close. We're going to build something here, aren't we? Something that lasts. That's the plan. I like that plan. The railway construction started in May, bringing an influx of workers who needed feeding. Eliza saw the opportunity immediately and negotiated contracts to supply eggs and vegetables to 3 work camps. The money wasn't extraordinary, but it was steady, and steady money was worth more than occasional windfalls. Cole expanded their distribution network, making runs to mining camps and small settlements that had sprung up around the railway work. He became a familiar figure on the territory roads, his wagon loaded with Maddox produce, his reputation for fair dealing earning them customers who became regulars. We're becoming merchants, he said one night, counting the day's take. We're becoming whatever we need to be. Does it bother you that we're not traditional ranchers? Eliza considered. No, traditional ranchers are struggling. We're thriving. I'll take thriving over tradition any day. By summer, they employed 6 people full-time. Danny and Michael had stayed on after that first season, and they'd added 4 more workers as the operation grew. The ranch had transformed from a 2-person survival operation into an actual business. With growth came complications. Payroll had to be met every week. Supplies had to be ordered in bulk. Contracts had to be honored regardless of weather or personal crisis. The romance of frontier life gave way to the grind of running a successful enterprise. Some days Eliza missed the simplicity of just her and Cole against the world. Then she'd look at their books and see what they'd built, and the nostalgia would fade. This was better. Harder, but better. August brought unexpected visitors. A couple from Pennsylvania arrived at the ranch, asking questions about mail-order marriages and starting fresh in Montana territory. They'd read about the region in a Philadelphia newspaper and wanted to know if the stories were true. Could a person really build a life out here from nothing? Eliza looked at Cole. Cole looked at Eliza. Then they invited the couple in and told them the truth. It's harder than you can imagine, Eliza said. You'll work until you can't feel your hands. You'll lose things you love. You'll question every decision you make. But, Cole added, if you survive it, you'll build something no one can take from you. Not the weather, not hostile neighbors, not bad luck. It'll be yours because you bled for it. Did you two start this way? The woman asked. Mail order marriage? Yeah, Eliza said. I answered an ad, showed up with chickens, and no idea what I was doing. And now? Now we run one of the most successful operations in the territory. Not because we were lucky or smart, but because we refused to quit. The couple stayed for dinner, asking 100 questions. When they left, they looked both terrified and determined, the right mix for what they were about to attempt. Think they'll make it? Cole asked. Some will, some won't. That's how it works. You ever regret it? Answering my ad? Eliza looked around their home, bigger now, with a proper addition and real furniture. Looked at the ranch beyond, thriving and productive. Looked at the man who'd become her partner in every sense. Not once, she said. Not even on the worst days. Not even when the cows died? Not even then. Not even when Shaw burned the barn? Cole, are you trying to make me regret this? He laughed. No, I'm grateful. For you. For this, for all of it. Me too. They stood on their porch as the sun set, watching their workers finish the day's tasks, watching their land produce and grow, watching the future they were building take shape in real time. September marked 2 years since they'd married. Cole planned something special, a trip to Helena for 3 days, leaving the ranch in Danny's capable hands. They stayed in an actual hotel, ate in restaurants, attended a territorial assembly meeting where they networked with other ranchers and business people. People knew them now. The Maddoxes from Bitterroot Junction, the couple who'd turned failing land into a success story. They were invited to dinners, asked for advice, treated as equals by people who would have dismissed them 2 years earlier. We're respectable, Eliza said with amusement. Terrifying, isn't it? A little. On their last night in Helena, they splurged on champagne, real French champagne that cost more than a week's wages. They drank it in their hotel room, toasting to survival and success and the stubborn refusal to let circumstance define destiny. What do you want next? Cole asked. Now that we've made it, what's the next goal? Eliza thought about it. I want to make sure this lasts, not just for us, but beyond us. I want to build something that survives even after we're gone. That's ambitious. Everything we do is ambitious. He raised his glass. To ambitious plans and the people crazy enough to attempt them. They clinked glasses and drank, and in that moment, Eliza felt perfectly content. Not because life was easy, it never would be, but because it was theirs. Every hard-won inch of it. The confrontation with Shaw that everyone expected never quite materialized. He continued his operations, they continued theirs, and the territory was big enough for both. The railway changed the economics, bringing competition and opportunity in equal measure. Shaw's traditional cattle operations struggled to adapt. The Maddox diversified approach thrived. By autumn, rumors circulated that Shaw was looking to sell. Not to them, his pride wouldn't allow that, but to Eastern investors who saw opportunity in the railway expansion. When the sale went through in October, Shaw left the territory without ceremony or farewell. That's it? Eliza said when she heard. He just leaves? Some battles don't end with dramatic confrontations. Sometimes people just move on. It feels anticlimactic. Good. I've had enough climax to last a lifetime. Without Shaw's antagonism, the ranch settled into something approaching normalcy. Problems still arose. Weather, market fluctuations, equipment failures. But they were normal problems, the kind every business faced. Manageable. Survivable. November brought the first real surprise. Eliza had been feeling off for weeks, exhausted, queasy, emotional in ways that made no sense. She'd ignored it, attributing it to overwork and stress. But when she missed her monthly cycle for the second time, she couldn't ignore it anymore. She was pregnant. The realization hit her in the chicken coop of all places, surrounded by birds and the smell of feed. She sat down hard on a feed barrel, her mind racing. A baby. They were going to have a baby. Fear came first. They'd lost so much already. Sarah and Jamie's graves on the hillside were constant reminders of how fragile life was out here. Could she survive childbirth? Could the baby? What if history repeated itself? Then anger, at herself for being afraid, at the world for making parenthood terrifying, at the unfairness of women bearing this particular risk. Finally, beneath the fear and anger, something else. Hope. Excitement. The sense that maybe, just maybe, this was what they'd been building toward all along. She told Cole that night over dinner, just blurted it out without preamble. I'm pregnant. He dropped his fork. You're... what? Pregnant. A baby. Due in the spring, probably. Cole's face went through a complicated series of expressions. Shock, fear, joy, terror, wonder. Before settling on something that looked like cautious happiness. We're having a baby. That's generally how pregnancy works. Are you okay? Do you need a doctor? Should you be working? Cole, I'm pregnant, not dying. I know, but... He stopped, collected himself. I'm scared. Me too. But you're happy? Eliza considered. I think so. Ask me again when I'm not terrified. He came around the table and pulled her close, and they stood like that for a long time, holding each other against the fear and uncertainty, against the memories of previous losses, against the very real dangers that childbirth represented on the frontier. We'll get through this, Cole said. Promise? No, but we'll try our hardest. It was the most honest answer he could give, and somehow that honesty was more comforting than false promises would have been. The pregnancy complicated everything. Eliza tried to maintain her usual pace, but exhaustion and morning sickness made that impossible. She had to delegate more, trust her workers to handle tasks she'd always done herself. It was difficult, frustrating, and ultimately necessary. Cole became obsessively protective. He wanted her to stop working entirely, to rest and let others handle the ranch. Eliza refused. She'd worked too hard to build this operation to sit idle now. They compromised. She'd work half days, avoid heavy lifting, and stop immediately if anything felt wrong. Cole would handle more of the physical labor and stop hovering like she was made of glass. It worked mostly. Some days better than others. Winter came with the usual challenges, but the ranch was prepared. They'd learned the rhythms of this land, understood its demands, and offered respect in return. The cold was brutal, but they'd been through brutal before. In January, Eliza felt the baby move for the first time, a flutter that became a kick, proof of life growing inside her. She grabbed Cole's hand and placed it on her belly, and they waited together until he felt it too. That's our kid, he said, wonder in his voice. Strong, just like us. Or stubborn, just like us. Probably both. They laughed, and in that moment the fear receded. Not gone. Fear never fully left when stakes were this high, but manageable. Balanced by joy and anticipation. February marked 3 years since Eliza had arrived as a mail-order bride with nothing but a trunk and chickens. The ranch had transformed so completely that newcomers couldn't believe it had ever struggled. But Cole and Eliza remembered. They remembered every fight, every loss, every moment they'd considered quitting. We should celebrate, Cole said one evening. How? I don't know. Maybe just acknowledge how far we've come. So they did. They took inventory, not of goods and livestock, but of growth. They'd survived Shaw's harassment, fires, storms, disease, legal challenges, and their own doubts. They'd built a profitable operation that employed 8 people and supplied goods across the territory. They'd earned respect from a community that had once dismissed them. Most importantly, they'd built a partnership that had survived everything the land and life could throw at it. Not bad for a desperate gamble, Eliza said. Best gamble I ever took. Second best. The chickens were the best gamble. Cole laughed. Fair enough, the chickens were pretty smart. The baby came in April, during a spring storm that made getting the midwife an adventure. Eliza labored for 18 hours, long enough for Cole to wear a path in the floor, long enough for doubt to creep in, long enough for both of them to remember graves on a hillside and the fragility of life. But this baby was strong, just like them, just like they'd promised each other. A girl. 7 pounds, loud, angry at being born, and absolutely perfect. They named her Sarah, after Cole's first wife, because some honors were worth giving. Some memories deserved to be celebrated rather than buried. Cole held his daughter and cried, great racking sobs that released 3 years of grief and fear and desperate hope. Eliza watched him, exhausted and relieved and feeling like maybe they'd finally earned something good. She's beautiful, Cole managed. She's ours. Yeah, she is. News of the baby spread through the territory with surprising speed. Gifts arrived, hand-carved toys, knitted blankets, jars of preserves. The community that had once judged them now celebrated with them. The young couple from Pennsylvania sent a letter of congratulations along with a small silver rattle they could barely afford. People invested in success. They wanted the Maddox story to have a happy ending because it proved that happy endings were possible, even out here where survival was uncertain and comfort was rare. Summer arrived when the baby thriving and the ranch running smoothly despite the new demands on their time. Eliza had hired a young woman from town, Catherine, 17 and eager to learn, to help with household tasks and baby care. It freed Eliza to maintain oversight of the operation without being overwhelmed. I'm a working mother, Eliza said one day, the realization striking her as significant. Is that allowed? Cole teased. It is now. She refused to be constrained by expectations about what mothers should or shouldn't do. Sarah would grow up seeing a woman who worked, who led, who built something meaningful. That example mattered as much as any inheritance they could leave her. By the baby's first birthday, the ranch had expanded again. A second barn, properly built this time. A larger house with actual bedrooms. A workshop where Cole had started making furniture to sell. Another income stream. Another hedge against uncertainty. They had money saved. Real money. Enough to survive multiple bad years. The constant financial panic that had defined their early years had faded into mere caution. They were secure in ways that would have seemed impossible 3 years earlier. We should buy cattle, Cole said one evening. Eliza looked up from nursing Sarah. We said we wouldn't do cattle again. I know. But we're stronger now, smarter. And with the railway bringing better prices, cattle make sense. She considered it. The old fear was still there. Memories of sick cows and lost calves, but they'd survived worse since then. Maybe it was time to try again. Okay, she said, but we start small. 2 breeding pairs, nothing more. Build slow. Deal. They bought the cattle in June from a reputable breeder, paying cash. No debt this time. Good stock, healthy, and proven. The animals settled into their expanded pasture, and Cole watched them with the satisfaction of a man who'd earned a second chance. The calves came that winter, 4 of them, all healthy, all surviving the cold that had killed their predecessors. It felt like redemption, like the land saying maybe, just maybe, they'd paid enough dues. Sarah's second birthday brought another surprise. Eliza was pregnant again. We're going to have a full house, Cole said, his hand on her belly. Good. This place was built for family. You sure you can handle it? The ranch, 2 kids, everything? Cole Maddox, I crossed half a continent, survived Shaw, built this operation from nothing, and pushed a human out of my body. I can handle 2 children. He grinned. Yes, ma'am. The second baby came easier than the first. A boy this time, born in summer with less drama and more efficiency. They named him James, after Cole's lost son, another honor given to memory. With 2 children, the ranch dynamic shifted again. There were always diapers to change, meals to prepare, small crises to manage. But there was also laughter, the kind that came from watching children discover the world with fresh wonder. Sarah grew into a confident, curious girl who followed her father around the ranch, asking endless questions. James was quieter, more observant, but just as stubborn as his sister. They were frontier children, raised on hard work and high expectations, learning young that life required effort, and that effort brought rewards. 5 years after Eliza's arrival, the Maddox Ranch was unrecognizable from the failing operation Cole had been running alone. 300 chickens now, organized across multiple coops. 40 head of cattle, growing steadily. Gardens that produced enough to supply markets in 3 towns. A furniture workshop that had become Cole's passion project. Employee housing for their 8 full-time workers. They'd become what people called a success story. But success hadn't come from luck or genius. It came from refusing to quit when quitting made sense. From making hard choices and living with consequences. From partnership that valued equal contribution over traditional roles. We should expand more, Eliza said one evening, reviewing their books. Into what? I'm not sure yet, but we have capital, infrastructure, reputation. We should use it. Cole looked at his wife, no longer the uncertain woman who'd stepped off the train with chickens and hope. She was a businesswoman now, confident and capable, with a mind for opportunities most people missed. What are you thinking? Maybe we buy land. The property adjacent to ours is for sale. We could expand our operation or lease it to other families trying to start out. That's ambitious. Everything we do is ambitious. They bought the land, another 160 acres that doubled their holdings. Half they worked themselves, expanding their cattle and chicken operations. The other half they divided into smaller parcels and leased to 3 families who needed a start. It was community building disguised as business. Each family they helped had a better chance of success with established infrastructure and experienced mentorship. And if they succeeded, the whole territory became stronger. The children grew. Sarah turned 5, then 6, then 7. A whirlwind of energy and questions who loved the chickens as much as her mother had. James turned 3, then 4, curious about everything his father did with wood and tools. They were ranch children, learning young that work came before play, but that work well done was its own reward. Eliza taught them to read using newspapers and chicken husbandry manuals. Cole taught them practical skills: how to care for animals, fix what broke, solve problems through creativity rather than just money. They were getting an education no school could provide. Shaw's name came up occasionally. He'd moved to California, people said, investing in shipping and doing well. Eliza felt nothing hearing about his success. No anger, no vindication. Just the distant acknowledgement that some conflicts resolved not through victory, but through people moving on. 8 years after Eliza's arrival, the Montana Territory was granted statehood. The celebration in Bitterroot Junction lasted 3 days, with parades and speeches and general enthusiasm about the future. Cole and Eliza attended with their children, watching history unfold, aware they'd been part of building this place into something worth celebrating. "We helped make this," Eliza said, watching the parade. "We did our part. Think it'll last? The state? Probably. Us? Definitely." She leaned against him, and they watched their children play with other ranch kids, all of them oblivious to the significance of the moment. All of them just living lives that would have been impossible a generation earlier. That night, back at the ranch, Eliza stood on the porch looking at everything they'd built. The main house, solid and comfortable. The barns, well-maintained and functional. The coops, scientifically organized and productive. The cattle grazing peacefully in expanded pastures. The garden, lush even in autumn. The workshop where Cole's furniture waited for market day. It was theirs. All of it. Built through blood and sweat and stubborn refusal to accept failure. Cole joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. They developed this ritual over the years, ending each day together on the porch, reviewing what worked and what needed fixing, planning tomorrow while acknowledging today. "We did all right," Cole said. "Better than all right." "Yeah, we did." They stood in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of partnership and shared struggle. The land stretched before them, no longer an enemy, but not quite a friend either. Respectful coexistence, earned through understanding its rules and refusing to expect mercy. "You ever think about that first day?" Eliza asked. "When I stepped off the train? Sometimes. You looked so determined, so completely unprepared." "I was terrified." "I know, so was I." "What were you afraid of?" "Failing you. Watching you realize you'd made a terrible mistake." He set down his coffee and took her hand. "I'm glad you were too stubborn to quit. I'm glad you were too stubborn to let me." The children's voices drifted from inside, Sarah reading to James, her voice patient and clear. The next generation, growing up with opportunities their parents had fought to create. They'd never know hunger like Cole and Eliza had, never face the kind of desperation that came from having nothing and no one. But they'd know work. They'd know responsibility. They'd learn that nothing worth having came easy, and that easy wasn't worth having anyway. "What do you want for them?" Eliza asked. "Choices. More choices than we had." "And if they choose to leave?" Cole considered. "Then we raise them right. This place should be their foundation, not their prison." It was the wisdom of someone who'd learned the hard way that control was illusion and that the best legacy was teaching people to stand on their own. Years continued passing. Sarah grew into a young woman with her mother's head for business and her father's practical skills. She took over more of the chicken operation, implementing innovations that increased production another 20%. James developed a gift for working with cattle, understanding them in ways that couldn't be taught, only felt. Neither child took their inheritance for granted. They'd grown up watching their parents work themselves exhausted, watching the ranch nearly fail multiple times, understanding that security was earned daily through effort and attention. "They're going to be fine," Eliza said one evening, watching them work together to fix a broken fence. "Better than fine. They're going to be great." "Think they'll keep the ranch going?" "I think they'll build whatever they want, and that's exactly right." The Maddox Ranch became an institution in the territory, now state. People pointed it out as an example of what was possible with determination and smart planning. Young couples starting out asked for advice. Established ranchers studied their methods. The operation they'd built had grown beyond them, becoming something larger than any individual could claim. Eliza published a guide to chicken husbandry that sold across 3 states. Cole's furniture developed a reputation for quality that kept orders backed up for months. They'd become, against all odds and expectations, successful in ways that transcended mere survival. But the success never made them forget the struggle. They still woke before dawn, still checked every animal personally, still fixed what broke themselves whenever possible. The habits formed in desperation became the foundation of prosperity. On their 15th anniversary, they climbed the hillside where Sarah and Jamie's graves stood. 2 more markers had been added over the years. The cows they'd lost, memorialized because grief didn't discriminate between human and animal when you'd invested your hope in something. Think they'd be proud? Cole asked, looking at Sarah's grave. I think they'd be happy you kept living. Sometimes I feel guilty about that, about being happy when they're gone. Don't. Grief and joy aren't enemies. You can hold both. It was something Eliza had learned through her own losses, that honoring the dead didn't require permanent sorrow, that the best memorial was living well, building something that lasted, refusing to let tragedy define everything that came after. They stood on the hillside looking down at the ranch, at the life they'd built through sheer refusal to quit. The main house had been expanded twice. 3 barns now, all solid. Multiple chicken operations. Growing cattle herd. Orchards beginning to produce in earnest. A community of workers and their families who'd chosen to build their lives around the Maddox operation. It was more than a ranch. It was a legacy. Not of land or money, but of determination. Of partnership. Of 2 people who'd started as desperate strangers and become something unbreakable together. We did all right, didn't we? Cole said. Yeah, we did. They walked back down the hillside, hand in hand, the afternoon sun warm on their backs. There was work waiting. There was always work waiting. But there was also satisfaction in knowing the work mattered, that it built something beyond themselves, that future generations would benefit from what they'd sacrificed to create. Sarah was waiting on the porch when they returned, a ledger in hand and questions about expanding their egg distribution network. James was in the barn, working with a young horse that needed gentling. Life continued, demanding attention, offering rewards to those willing to pay the price. That night, after the children were asleep, and the day's work was finally done, Eliza and Cole sat on their porch one more time. It had become their favorite place. This in-between space where house met land, where comfort met challenge, where they could see both what they'd built and what still needed building. If you could go back, Cole asked, knowing everything that would happen, would you still come? Eliza didn't hesitate. Yes. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They're what made this matter. Because that was the truth they'd learned through years of struggle and small victories. The easy things didn't teach you anything. The comfortable things didn't test what you were made of. It was the hard things, the impossible things, the things that should have broken you, that revealed what you could become when breaking wasn't an option. The Montana night settled around them, vast and indifferent as ever. The land hadn't changed. It still took everything you had and offered nothing in return except the chance to try again tomorrow. But they'd changed. They'd learned its language, respected its rules, and carved out a life that proved success was possible even in the harshest conditions. Their story would be told in the territory for years. The mail-order bride who arrived with chickens and built an empire. The broken widower who learned to trust again. The partnership that survived everything the frontier could throw at it. Some details would be exaggerated, others forgotten. But the core truth would remain. That sometimes the best things in life come from desperate gambles. That strength isn't about never falling, but about getting up every single time. That partnership means carrying equal weight, not just sharing space. That legacy isn't what you leave behind, but what you build forward, giving others the chance to grow beyond what you accomplished. The Maddox Ranch stood as proof that determination mattered more than circumstances. That 2 people committed to the same goal could overcome obstacles that should have destroyed them. That love wasn't just feeling, it was choice, made daily, tested constantly, proven through action rather than words. And as Cole and Eliza sat together in the darkness, watching stars emerge over land they'd earned through blood and stubbornness, they understood something that couldn't be taught, only learned through living it. That home wasn't where you came from, it was what you built. And family wasn't who you started with, it was who you chose to stand beside when everything else was falling apart. They'd chosen each other, chosen this land, chosen to fight when fighting seemed pointless, and to build when building seemed impossible. And in the end, that choice made all the difference. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of livestock and growing things, of work done and work waiting. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new demands, new reasons to doubt and fear and consider quitting. But tomorrow they'd wake up and do it anyway. Because that's what survivors did. What builders did. What partners did. They'd build another day onto their legacy. Add another small victory to the accumulation of victories that became a life worth living. And years from now, when their children told this story to their own children, the details might blur and the timeline might compress. But the essential truth would survive. That two people with nothing but determination and each other built something that lasted. Not because they were special or lucky or blessed, but because they refused to quit. Because they learned that success wasn't about avoiding failure. It was about failing and getting up and trying again until eventually, impossibly, you stopped failing. The Maddox Ranch stood as testament to that truth. And as long as it stood, their legacy would continue. A frontier empire built not by conquest or inheritance, but by two people who chose courage over comfort and built something worth fighting for. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.